Chapter 955. Although she didn't know why her master suddenly wanted to take her pulse, she still obediently stretched out her hand. The beautiful master placed his fingers on her wrist and quietly felt it. Chu Qingyan was a bit bored and her gaze couldn't help but be attracted by that pair of delicate hands. This heaven-defying appearance and enviable skin, how did he maintain it? Just as Chu Qingyan was studying it, he had already retracted his hand. My internal injury is a bit serious. Adding on the fact that I didn't receive timely treatment, it has worsened. Chu Qingyan was stunned as she looked at her hand with some worry. At this time, a voice pierced through the air. "Master, don't scare Ayan." Chu Qingyan turned her head and saw a person slowly walking over with a few rabbits. She immediately stood up and went forward to help him. The beautiful master rubbed his chin and smiled. Isn't fun at all. Disciple's wife, although your injury is a bit serious, luckily the person who treated you has some skills and treated you very well. Next, you just need to properly cultivate the Heart Sutra that I gave you. When the time comes, you will definitely be able to cultivate your body and your skills will also improve. Work hard. When the time comes, I will bring you to the pugilistic world to play. Maybe when the time comes, you will take a fancy to some sex disciple and not want Su anymore. Xiao Su was helpless towards his master's blatant instigation, but he still had the heart to expose his master's words. "Master, you've said so much in a roundabout way, it's just that you want Ayan to cultivate that Heart Sutra. There's no harm in you saying it directly." Chu Qingyan blinked her eyes. Was he referring to the Heart Sutra that her master gave her today? The beautiful master's old face couldn't hold it in anymore as he angrily glared. "Stinky brat, your wife's meridians are not bad and suitable for martial arts. If she can receive some guidance, although she can't reach your level, she will still be one of the best in the pugilistic world. You're actually so bad. Can't you let your master be a bit more tactful?" Chu Qingyan was amused as she listened on the side. The beautiful master turned his head again and the expression on his face changed 180 degrees. He smiled and lovingly said, "Disciple's wife, you have a lot of potential. You have to study diligently. Your master is hungry. Quickly roast the rabbits. Your master is about to drool." Chu Qingyan felt that the beautiful master's emphasis was on the last sentence. The three of them walked for half a day and she was also a bit hungry. She began to prepare the game without saying anything. The seasoning powder that he had asked the earth spirit for before he left had also come in handy. Not long after, the meat roasted on the grills roasted ons to emit a tempting fragrance. To the point, to the point of to the point, to the meat roasted by the meat's dripping oil zestes mouth zest to the point. To the end of the roast to eat. Chu Qingyan could not help but smile when she saw this. "Master, we can start eating soon." Teat to looks to the point. By the time they started eating, the beautiful master had already devoured everything. He didn't have time to talk and was too hot to complain. He was eating with relish. Xiao Su broke off a leg from the meat and passed it to the person next to him. He also ate slowly. The beautiful master glanced at him. "You have to eat like this to appreciate the deliciousness of the food." He took another big bite. In the firelight, Chu Qingyan saw a faint smile on the big ice cube's face. His gaze was fixed on the person eating heartily. She couldn't help but smile too. It wasn't easy to see the big ice cube reveal such a gentle expression. It would be even better if there was another pot of wine at this time. After the beautiful master was full, he leaned against a tree trunk and burped. He didn't pay attention to his manners at all and just did whatever was comfortable. "Master, I have a winery in Jiangnan. If you don't mind, you can visit there. I'll get someone to send you wine." Chu Qingyan smiled. The beautiful master's eyes lit up. "Really?" Chu Qingyan didn't say anything and took out a jade pendant from her sleeve and handed it to him. "As long as you see this jade pendant, the winery under my name will provide you with an unlimited amount of wine. This is Ayan's filial piety to you." The big ice cube said that the Heart Sutra was a treasure that all martial artists wanted. The master gave it to her because he acknowledged her identity and showed his love for her. How could she be stingy when the master gave her such a precious gift? The beautiful master held the jade pendant and was as happy as a child. Chu Qingyan turned and smiled at the big ice cube beside her. Master is really easy to satisfy. Xiao Su's mouth twitched. He didn't make any comments. Disciple's wife, I still have a few secret manuals that can be used as table legs. I'll get Su, or to send someone to get them later. In the future, if you have anything good to eat or fun to play with, remember to show your filial piety to your master. Otherwise, your master will be wandering alone in the mortal world. My only disciple is so cold-blooded and heartless. Your master is so pitiful. The beautiful master sobbed. Chu Qingyan hurriedly agreed. Sigh, he really is an old man who loves to act. Xiao Su looked at him pretending to wipe his eyes to gain the little fellow's sympathy. He expressed his disdain for such behavior. Gradually, night fell. Chu Qingyan's body was a little weak. After chatting for a while, she unknowingly fell asleep. Xiao Su took off his coat and draped it over her body. At this moment, the sloppy half-moon old man saw this scene and couldn't help but tease, "You're becoming more and more like a husband." His disciple remained silent. Half-moon old man felt a little bored. He chewed on a piece of grass and looked at the crescent moon above his head. He swung his legs and smiled faintly. Su, how many years have we been apart? Exactly 5 years. Xiao Su said without hesitation. You must have lived well in these 5 years. At least you have more expressions on your face. You're no longer as expressionless as before. Half-moon old man glanced at him and smiled. Xiao Su didn't refute. I have Ayan by my side. Master knows that it was the retired emperor who arranged this marriage for you. Previously, I met your grandfather in the tavern. He didn't bring any money and cheated me of a lot of money for wine. Just thinking about it makes me angry. Oh no, I digress. Your grandfather said that you have a calamity in your life and you need a fated person to solve it. As long as this fated person stays by your side, you can turn misfortune into blessings. After thinking about it, he found this person. How could he tie her to your side? He slapped his head. Why don't you get engaged? Anyway, you lack a wife. She hasn't grown up yet. You can raise her and play with her. At the same time, you can also temper your temper. Half-moon old man laughed treacherously. Xiao Su didn't know that there was such a reason. He only wanted to rub his eyes when he heard this. An unreliable master and an unreliable imperial grandfather. This was really enough. But to be honest, the little girl is quite unlucky. She got involved with this foul imperial family. So, you have to treat her better. Half-moon old man finally said something reliable. Xiao Su nodded seriously. Disciple will remember. Sigh, it's not easy to make an iceberg understand. Master thought that you would be a bachelor for the rest of your life. Chapter 956. Chatting with his master, accompanied by his true love, was a rare moment of relaxation. In Xiao Su's eyes, this was more like a family having a picnic outside. Master, where do you plan to go next? Xiao Su leaned on the tree trunk and turned to ask. I'll decide tomorrow. If you don't have to worry about tomorrow's matters today, then you can enjoy your life. The half-moon old man said leisurely, then started to hum a tune. Leisurely, leisurely, there's meat, there's money, my heart is leisurely, my troubles are leisurely. Throughout the mountains, other than the chirping of insects and the croaking of frogs, there was only a clear and interesting hum. How long had it been since he heard this tune? Xiao Su looked up at the night sky, the stars twinkling in the sky. It was as if he had returned to those peaceful years. The mortal world is leisurely, life and death are leisurely, there's trouble and there's suffering. I have it, you have it, everyone has it. It's better to have a leisurely day, a leisurely lifetime. When Chu Qingyan woke up, the sky was already bright. She felt that she hadn't slept so comfortably for a long time, and it was under such natural scenery that she could completely relax. Last night's dream was filled with pleasant tunes. She couldn't help but stretch lazily, stood up refreshed, folded the big ice cube's coat, and then looked around to see where they had gone. At this time, a fruit flew over. She raised her hand to catch it, and then looked in the direction it came from. She smiled and said, "Good morning, master." Disciple's wife, did you sleep well last night? The beautiful master popped his head out from the tree and greeted her. She nodded. At this time, Xiao Su walked over with a few fish, not a trace of water vapor on his body. Good, we'll have grilled fish this morning. The beautiful master immediately urged his disciple's wife to prepare. Chu Qingyan smiled and agreed. It's good to have a wife who can cook. If you weren't taken, master would have brought you along. The beautiful master bit into the fish, his tone full of pity. But as soon as he finished speaking, he received a cold glance from his disciple and immediately looked away as if nothing had happened. Seeing his disciple's angry look, it was really good to eat. Master, how can I be like you with the art of retaining one's youthful appearance? Can you teach me? Chu Qingyan was very curious, and since she had the time, she immediately asked. Do you want to know? Yes, yes. Which girl wouldn't want to? The beautiful master beckoned with her finger. When Chu Qingyan saw this, she immediately wanted to go up to him. However, her collar was grabbed. She turned around and saw a dark face. Sit properly, Xiao Su said grumpily. Chu Qingyan heard this and immediately became angry. What are you doing? The beautiful master at the side immediately fanned the flames. Disciple, how can you be so fierce to your disciple's daughter-in-law? Be careful not to scare your wife away. I'm not his wife. Chu Qingyan hugged her shoulders and snorted. Xiao Su felt a headache coming on when he saw the two of them standing together against him. That's not what I meant, Ian. What do you mean? Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. You don't want me to ask master for advice. Is it because you don't want me to maintain my appearance? Do you want me to obediently stay at home and be your haggard wife in the future? That's what he meant. The beautiful master didn't realize that she was the fuse at all and continued to fan the flames. Xiao Su rubbed his eyebrows and then took the little fellow's hand. He lowered his eyes and explained, What I mean is, no matter what you look like, you'll always be the most beautiful in my eyes. There's no need to think about those insignificant methods. Once these words came out, they successfully appeased Chu Qingyan's emotions. Her family's big ice cube was the kind of person who didn't usually say romantic words, but when it came to critical moments, he would immediately seduce people. What should she do? She really wanted to pounce on him. But, cough cough, public morals are degenerating day by day. How can you casually say such words in front of the elderly? Also, disciple, you were jealous just now, weren't you? An untimely voice sounded. Only then did Chu Qingyan remember that there was someone else beside them. She immediately stood up and stomped her feet. I'll go get some water for you to drink. After saying that, she immediately ran off. The beautiful master, who wished for the world to be in chaos, took the last bite of the fish and pulled the fish bone out of his mouth. He said with a smile, Disciple's daughter-in-law is so easily embarrassed. Xiao Su sighed lightly. In the future, he shouldn't let the little fellow stay with master, otherwise he would have to think about how to put out the fire every day. Time passed by amidst the jesting of the beautiful master. Good times always flew by quickly. Disciple's daughter-in-law, master has to go. So fast. In a short period of time, she already liked this beautiful master who didn't put on airs and was very cute. There's no banquet that doesn't end. But before I leave, master has a gift for you. The beautiful master said with a smile. But when we met, didn't master just give Ian a gift? Chu Qingyan hurriedly said. This is what it means to have a beginning and an end. Come, watch carefully. Master will show you a set of sword techniques. You can remember as much as you can. There's no need to force yourself. As soon as his voice fell, the beautiful master picked up a withered branch from the ground and began to wave it. Graceful and graceful, like moving clouds and flowing water, like a dragon swimming in the air. Every move was like a silver chain, wantonly dancing in the air, beautiful and smooth. Knowing that this was the beautiful master teaching her martial arts, she immediately watched without blinking, concentrating on memorizing the sword moves in her mind. When the last move was finished, the beautiful master looked at her with a smile. This is something that master casually made up to deceive people when I was traveling these past few years. But it's very suitable for a girl like you. If you can remember 50% of it, you can walk sideways in Jianghu. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Thank you, master. Ayan has memorized it all. Memorized it all? This time, it was the beautiful master's turn to be surprised. She nodded heavily. Xiao Su said rather proudly, Ayan has a photographic memory. The beautiful master glanced at his disciple's wife in surprise, then said regretfully, if only master was born 20 years earlier. Su, this brat is really lucky. Chu Qingyan laughed mischievously. All right, it's almost time. Master has a few friends to drink, so you don't have to send me off. The beautiful master waved his hand casually at the two of them with his back facing them. Then, he swung the withered branch in his hand and walked slowly. However, every step he took covered several feet, and he soon disappeared in front of them. Only his loud chanting still echoed in the air. In life, you worry about me and I suffer. Only talking about winning and losing, how much joy is there? It's better to walk the Jianghu with a jug of wine and a sword, free and unrestrained, unrestrained and unrestrained. It was really enviable. Big ice block. Master is living so freely. Master is a person with a story. Only by completely letting go can he be carefree and open up about life. Xiao Su smiled faintly, then bent down in front of her. I'll carry you. She nodded, knowing that her current body was not suitable for practicing martial arts. Lying on Xiao Su's back, she looked back in the direction where he had disappeared. A faint admiration appeared in her eyes, then she turned back and let the big ice block carry her quickly through the forest. Chapter 957. Big Ice Cube, once we're done with everything, let's walk the Jianghu with wine and a sword. What do you think? She laid on his broad shoulders, feeling the wind blowing against her face. She suddenly had this thought and blurted it out. Xiao Su clenched his fists, his gaze deep. Although there was still a long way to go and it would be very difficult, he still wanted to give her this promise. All right. If you want to go to the end of the world, I'll go with you. If you want to go to the end of the world, I'll go with you. The world is vast. Wherever you are, that's where I'll settle down. She hugged his neck tightly and smiled contentedly. No one knows what the road ahead will be like, but with your promise now, I'm satisfied. Happiness is not the end. It's the scenery that we'll see together through the ups and downs of the road. When the two returned to the army, it was already evening. After eating some dry rations, Huoling passed on a message. Master, Jean Exen sent a message saying that he hasn't found the place where Southern Song's rations are stored. Xiao Su nodded. The Prince of Nansong is very cautious. Tell him not to be too anxious and to be careful. Huoling nodded and continued, the Southern Song army is indeed as Master said. They're biding their time and have sent out scouts to monitor our movements. Turin said from the side, the carrier pigeons we sent out have been intercepted by the Southern Song army. It seems that Pang Huang already believes that our rations have been burned. He's waiting for us to be forced into a dead end before launching an attack. Xiao Su smiled slightly. Very good. Send people to pretend to be searching for rations and create an illusion for the Southern Song army. Yes, Master. The two obeyed. It was getting late. Everyone set up camp in the mountain forest. Some started fires, while others gathered firewood. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Cheng Yinlua's illness had not fully recovered and she was coughing nonstop. At this time, other than the sound of patrolling and the chirping of insects, her voice was particularly clear in this quiet environment. Ethereal was grinding the medicinal powder when she heard the sound. Her brows furrowed tightly, and the pain in her eyes was so intense that it could not be dispersed. Chu Qingyan, who was looking into the distance, couldn't help but raise her eyebrows when she saw this scene. Could it be, as Turin said, that there was a secret to Ethereal? Big Ice Cube, do all of you like to put your thoughts on other people? She couldn't help but poke the person beside her with her elbow. Xiao Su followed her line of sight and understood. He thought for a while and said, that depends on what it is. If it's for the other party's good, maybe. You guys are always so stubborn, unilaterally making decisions for others. I don't want to talk to you tonight. Chu Qingyan remembered how he sent her away that year and couldn't help but vent her anger. Xiao Su looked at the person walking away and couldn't help but sigh softly. His little fellow still couldn't forget this matter. What a headache. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already returned to her tent. Because she was dressed as a man, and because Yen Luo's identity had been exposed, she was now accompanying her as a female doctor. Therefore, Yen Luo had a separate tent. As for Yen Luo, because she was injured, she also had a separate room. At this time, Chu Qingyan sat in her tent for a while. She heard the sound of coughing from time to time. She couldn't stand it any longer and got up to walk to Yen Luo's tent. "Why are you here?" Yen Luo was surprised to see the person in front of her. Chu Qingyan sat down beside her and smiled. "It's still early and I can't sleep. I heard you coughing, so I came to see you." Yen Luo was listless when she heard that. She smiled laboriously. "I'll be fine in 2 more days." Chu Qingyan didn't really believe her. Although she didn't know much about medicine, she knew that emotions could affect a person's condition. Especially Yen Luo, who was depressed now, it was very detrimental to her condition. She wanted to mention her relationship with Ethereal, but after thinking about it, she felt that it wouldn't be good to be too direct. Therefore, she beat around the bush and said, "You and Ethereal don't seem to have talked much recently? We're not in contact anymore." Yen Luo's smile disappeared. Sure enough, the word ethereal was like gunpowder in front of her. Chu Qingyan was silent for a moment. If she didn't say anything now, she was afraid that she wouldn't have the chance to say anything in a few days when she would be busy. "Yen Luo, have you ever thought that Ethereal seems to have suddenly become a different person? His attitude towards you is completely different from before. In fact, it might be because he has difficulties in his heart." Chu Qingyan didn't get any reaction from Yen Luo after she finished speaking. She felt that something was amiss. Yen Luo forced a nonchalant smile and said, "Little girl, I've given up on him. Even if he has difficulties in his heart, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I can't accept a person who keeps pushing me away for reasons I don't know. Since he told me that there's no place for me in his heart, even if he has difficulties, I'll follow his wishes and believe him." Yen Luo, Chu Qingyan didn't know what to say. "I'm exhausted. I've used up all my strength in the past few years. I can't go on anymore." Yen Luo smiled. Her eyes were like flowers of loneliness. No matter how beautiful the road was, no matter how much one looked forward to the end, if there was no one to support them along the way, they would give up sooner or later due to exhaustion. At this moment, Chu Qingyan didn't know what else to say to comfort her. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought this up again. Little girl, it's all right. You don't have to blame yourself. This is the life I'll have to face in the future." Yen Luo smiled faintly. A trace of envy appeared in her eyes. "Actually, I'm very happy for you. You've met someone who cares about you. This way, you won't have to work so hard." Chu Qingyan held her cold hands, wanting to give her some warmth. "Don't be sad. You still have me. All right." Yen Luo smiled at her. After Yen Luo fell asleep, Chu Qingyan left. On the way, she encountered Ethereal. "Young master." Ethereal called out, then stood there hesitantly. She could tell that he had something to say. She stopped in her tracks and asked, "What is it? Is she having a bad cough? I've prepared some loquat cough ointment." Before Ethereal could finish, Chu Qingyan interrupted him. "Ethereal, tell me honestly, did you give up on Yen Luo because you have difficulties?" Ethereal stood there silently. After a long while, he said sadly, "Young master, please believe me. I won't hurt Yen Luo." "Isn't the harm already there?" Chu Qingyan retorted. Ethereal was speechless. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. She took the ointment from him. "Why do you have to do this?" She then turned and walked towards Yen Luo's tent. Ethereal lowered his eyes and smiled bitterly. As long as she lived well, he was willing to bear all the blame. Chapter 958. Sichuan's capital city. Higashio Motetsu stood in his study, holding the news about the front line in his hands. The little girl was surrounded and injured. These words tugged at his heartstrings. After seeing that she had successfully escaped danger, he let out a long sigh of relief. Then a question suddenly popped into his mind. He was thousands of miles away, but he couldn't bear to hear that she was injured. If he stood on the opposite side of her, how would he face it? If the little girl wasn't Xiao Su's woman, would it be easy for him to kill her? He clutched the letter in his hand tightly, a trace of confusion in his eyes. He had already decided on the outcome. Why was it that when he heard that she was injured, he began to waver? He had always done as he pleased. He rarely hesitated like this. Just then, someone knocked on the door. "Young palace master, the palace master is looking for you." Higashio Motetsu put away the expression on his face and returned to his usual frivolous self. "Tell him I'll be there soon." He threw the letter in his hand into the stove, opened his folding fan, and unhurriedly pushed open the door and left. When he reached the hall, the palace master was already sitting at the head of the table, waiting for him. When he saw him enter, his brows furrowed slightly. "It's not easy to find you every time. I have to beg and beg to see you. You're getting more and more arrogant." Higashio Motetsu had just sat down when he heard his father's words. His lips curled into a mocking smile. "Father, it seems that every time you look for your son, it's for other people's business." The palace master's face stiffened, and then he flew into a rage out of humiliation. "What kind of attitude is this?" "My attitude is right there. It's up to you whether you want to see me or not." Higashio Motetsu stood up and turned to leave. "Stop right there." The palace master slammed the table. Higashio Motetsu turned to look at him. "Father, please remember that your son is amenable to persuasion, but not coercion." The Eastern Court Palace Lord's face darkened when he heard this, but he tried to suppress his anger. In the end, he sighed and said, "Don't always act like a hedgehog whenever you see me. I won't hurt you." "Is that so?" Higashio Motetsu waved his folding fan, his smile full of ridicule. For the sake of the big picture, the palace master didn't want to bicker with him. Ignoring the sarcasm in his words, he asked, "How's the task I assigned to you?" Sure enough, every time he saw him, he had business. But he was used to it. Dongting Wangyu sat back in her chair and replied casually, "I've already found out that one of the ministers is colluding with the left prime minister. I plan to give him the evidence of the right prime minister's corruption over the years." "I knew he had ulterior motives. Have you dealt with him yet?" The Eastern Court Palace master was slightly angered. "Why are you so agitated over other people's affairs? I've already taken care of the person in secret. The evidence in his hands will be delivered to you by the afternoon at the latest. Don't worry, I didn't leave any traces." Higashio Motetsu sneered. The palace master was angry again because of his tone, but he knew that his son was frivolous and had a bad temper. He couldn't help but swallow his anger. There were still many things he needed him to do in the future. He snorted and didn't dwell on the matter. "By the way, there's something I need you to investigate." He remembered what his junior sister had told him and brought it up. "What is it?" Higashio Motetsu's handsome face showed some impatience. A young man appeared by Xiao Su's side. "His name is Chu Yen." "Find out who he is," the palace master said. Higashio Motetsu tightened his grip on the fan when he heard this name. He lowered his eyes and asked in a normal tone, "Why do you want to investigate this person?" "This person has helped Xiao Su a lot. If we let him live, he'll be a disaster sooner or later. Now that he's not a threat yet, we need to get rid of him. But before that, we need to investigate his background." The palace master didn't notice the displeasure in his son's eyes when he said this. Higashio Motetsu waved his fan and said indifferently, "There's no need to investigate this person. I know him." "Tell me." The palace master was surprised. Higashio Motetsu sneered. "He's just a third-rate kid. He's relying on his status as a distant relative of Xiao Su's fiancée, Chu Qingyan. He doesn't have any real skills, but he's good at gambling and eating." "Then what about the rumors in the past few years?" The palace master raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Higashio Motetsu leaned back in his chair and chuckled. He said in a mocking tone, "How can rumors be trusted? They're just rumors spread by Xiao Su's people to curry favor with him. If you don't believe me, you can send a few people to Lianqing to investigate." Hearing this, the palace master believed him a little. "Since you say so, then it's true. Recently, you should pay more attention to Minister's movements. If there's any movement, send someone to inform father. Seeing that his father had given up on investigating the little girl's background, Higashio Motetsu also gave up on arguing with him. He agreed and turned to leave the room that made him uncomfortable. After leaving the room, Higashio Motetsu looked at the distant horizon with a worried expression. Little girl, I can help you hide it now and ward off some disasters. But the longer you stay by Xiao Su's side, the more danger you'll face. When that time comes, what will you do? TSK, why are you so stupid? You like to squeeze wherever there's danger. At this moment, Chu Qingyan sneezed heavily. She rubbed her nose and heard Big Ice Cube's concerned voice. Did you catch a cold last night? Chu Qingyan put down her hand and shook her head. Pursing her lips, she said, 1 is thinking, 2 is scolding, and 3 is catching a cold. I hit 2 people just now. Someone must be talking behind my back. Xiao Su looked at her helplessly. At this moment, Huo Ling came in with a report. Master, Jean Xian sent over some good news. When Chu Qingyan heard that it was about Jean Xian, she asked in surprise, what good news? They've already found out where the Southern Blue Army hid their rations. It's in the Long Swamp Valley, and there are countless soldiers guarding it. Normally, when they need rations, they'll send people to secretly collect them. Huo Ling reported with a smile. Chu Qingyan clapped her hands and smiled, beautifully done. Xiao Su also smiled because of this news. He really didn't misjudge Jean Xian. In terms of investigation ability, Jean Xian wasn't below Huo Ling and Turin. He instructed, send someone to send a message to Jean Xian. If he needs more manpower, send a message back. Huo Ling acknowledged and continued, just now, the various generals have also sent a message back. Their men are already in position and covered. If there's any movement, they can immediately mobilize their troops. Very good. Now that we don't have any worries, we just have to wait for the enemy to walk right into our trap. Xiao Su revealed a steely expression. Everything was ready except for the east wind. Chapter 959. On this day, dark clouds drifted over from the horizon, casting a gloomy atmosphere. The air was humid, stuffy, and a little dry and hot, making it hard to breathe. Chu Qingyan looked up and had a premonition that something was about to happen. At this moment, Qing Yenluo coughed softly and approached her. What are you thinking about? I'm calculating when the enemy will attack. Chu Qingyan supported her with a smile. Cheng Yenluo smiled. They'll come sooner or later. Don't think too much. By the way, why haven't I seen your pets for the past 2 days? Chu Qingyan looked around. They've gone to send off their companions. They should be back soon. Cheng Yenluo didn't quite understand. What's going on? Don't we have a better chance of winning with the eagles and wolves? She had seen them attack before. Because they were birds and beasts, the usual methods humans used to deal with them were useless against them. Coupled with their ferocious size, humans were no match for them. If the little girl and the others used them well, these eagles and wolves would become an invincible divine weapon. Chu Qingyan's lips curled up slightly as she explained. Big Ice Cube said that the eagle wolf listens to a person's orders, which is very rare in this area. So, in order not to attract too much attention and attract trouble, it's best not to let them appear in front of too many people. Furthermore, this is a war between humans after all. I don't really want to get them involved. Chu Qingyan said the last sentence very sincerely. She understood the little girl's thoughts. She couldn't help but reach out and pat the back of Chu Qingyan's hand. Those who are benevolent will be blessed by the heavens. Chu Qingyan smiled at her. At this moment, eagle cries and wolf howls came from afar. The two of them smiled and looked back. The few people standing under the shade of the tree heard the sound and looked over. They saw a few waist-high snow wolves pouncing on the red-clothed youth. A giant eagle stood by the side, humming disdainfully. In short, it was smiling happily. No one would have thought that the few animals that young master adopted back then would bring such a huge surprise. If I can participate in the battle between the two armies, how powerful would that be? Huo Ling clicked his tongue and sighed with emotion. Turin gave him a chestnut and said when he was feeling indignant, Master has his reasons for doing this. If you have the leisure to chat here, why don't you go down and do more work? Hualing snorted, you talk too much. Xiao Su didn't pay attention to his subordinate's argument. His gaze was fixed on the person who was laughing heartily. His gaze was soft. He knew that the presence of the eagles and wolves would hasten the victory of the war, but he did not want to do so. Because of the appearance of the eagle and wolf packs, during this time, Xue Ling had sent news that many people in the capital were eager to investigate the little fellow's identity. If he knew that she had such an ability, it would only bring him more harm than good. He absolutely couldn't allow the little fellow to be exposed to the wind and waves. He would rather spend more effort than let anything happen to her. His eyes were instantly replaced by coldness, and no one dared to look him in the eye. At this time, a scout quickly walked over. He stood in front of Xiao Su and respectfully reported, "Master, the Prince of Nansong has brought people to attack. They are already 10 li away." Xiao Su curled his lips when he heard this. They came just in time. 2 hours ago. Your Highness the Crown Prince, in the past few days, our subordinates have discovered that Xiao Su is secretly sending people around to exchange food with the common people. I heard that some of them have already begun to eat tree bark due to hunger. A general entered the main tent and reported. Pang Huang stood up when he heard this and revealed a happy expression. He walked in front of the Sichuan map and pointed at it. He said to the soldiers behind him, Xiao Su's army has already arrived here. Have the ambush army prepare. Once they appear, immediately surround them. The generals ordered. Pang Huang took a helmet from the side and proudly said, "This time, this crown prince will fight with you." Your Highness the Crown Prince is mighty. Everyone's morale was boosted, and their roars were deafening. If we succeed this time, we will be able to reach the capital and force that old man Sichuan to roll off the dragon throne. The merger of the two countries will be just around the corner. Pang Huang raised his eyebrows and said domineeringly, "Make that old man Sichuan roll off the throne." Everyone shouted in agreement. Before the battle began, Pang Huang warmed everyone up with a few words. It had to be said that he was a very qualified commander. Thus, they waited 10 li away for the battle. And in a place that Pang Huang did not expect, a silent assassination was unfolding. In Changza Valley, a gentle breeze blew and the grass danced. More than a dozen black shadows shuttled through the tall grass. On the mountain road, a small group of soldiers carrying long spears were patrolling. It was already close to noon and the sun was a little hot. The soldiers were a little impetuous and listless as they walked. The black figures lay in the grass and watched as the small group passed by the small path that they bought last year. The leader of the black figures raised his hand and the others received the order to spread out and lock on to their targets. However, when the small squad arrived in front of them, the black-clothed man immediately leapt into the air and appeared behind the southern blue soldiers. Before they could even react and draw out their weapons, the black-clothed man had already soundlessly locked onto their lifelines. Their methods were very fast and the soldiers fell before they could even feel the pain. "Sir, they've all been dealt with," one of them reported. The leader of the black figures took off his mask. It was Jin Xian, who had been ordered by Xiao Su. He ordered without hesitation, "Change into their clothes and clean them up." Everyone complied, immediately stripping off the soldiers' clothes and changing into them. Then they disposed of their corpses. Very quickly, they picked up the spears on the ground and stood in a row. Under Jin Xian's hand gestures, everyone moved in the same direction as the southern blue soldiers, marching towards the long swamp valley campsite. After they left, the wind blew and the grass danced cheerfully. Everything was the same as before. No one would have thought that an assassination had just taken place here. No blood was spilled. Only the large patch of grass on the grassland had witnessed this silent ambush. Jin Xian and the others imitated the soldiers from before and slowly walked to the entrance of the camp. They thought that they would be able to enter smoothly, but they didn't expect to encounter an inspection. Jin Xian saw the strict formation outside the entrance and couldn't help but frown. This was different from what they had investigated for the past few days. "Sir, what should we do?" one of them asked in a low voice. At this moment, They were still walking towards the entrance and there were still a few groups in front of them that were about to be inspected. Wait and see. Jean Xian replied in a low voice. Soon it was their turn. The fat soldier leading the group, Bear, said fiercely. Hey, which camp are you from? Give me the secret signal. Chapter 960. Jean Xian casually walked up. What battalion are we from? We're under General Lang Lu's banner. Do we still need a secret signal? Lang Lu was one of Pang Huang's soldiers who was very good at fighting. He had made countless military achievements and had gained Pang Huang's appreciation. Now, he was in charge of looking after the provisions. However, there were some soldiers in the Southern Blue Army who came from other princes' factions. In order to show his generosity, Pang Huang sent some soldiers he didn't like to work with Lang Lu. In fact, he wanted to borrow Lang Lu's hand to make them a mere figurehead. Just now, there were two teams that didn't belong to Lang Lu's banner, so they were maliciously made difficult for by the fat soldier. On the contrary, Lang Lu's team went in without a hitch. Therefore, Jean Xian guessed that the fat soldier was sent by Lang Lu to make things difficult for those soldiers. Therefore, he pretended to be a rascal and probed. Sure enough, the fat soldier immediately waved his hand. All right, go in. Jean Xian nodded, but before he left, he curiously asked, Yo, brother, why are you suddenly so strict? Hearing this, the fat soldier spat and said very unconcernedly, The orders from above said that His Highness the Crown Prince will personally lead the troops into battle. It can be seen how important this battle is. Therefore, we were ordered to look after the provisions and not let anyone take advantage of the loopholes. Jean Xian, who was taking advantage of the loopholes, said seriously, Brother is right. I'll take the soldiers in to eat lunch. Later, I'll come out to continue patrolling. Don't let those thin Sichuan people take advantage of us. Good. Go, strive to make military achievements. At this time, a new soldier came in. The fat soldier said a few words and immediately went back to work. Then, Jean Xian lowered the brim of his hat and led the people into the pass. In the mountain forest, everyone was ready and waiting for the commander's orders. Xiao Su was wearing a silver battle robe and a red cloak fluttering in the wind. At this time, he stood in front of Chu Qingyan and whispered, You and Su Yi stay here. After this battle is over, I'll come and pick you up. Chu Qingyan nodded. She really didn't want to stay here and wait for news, but she knew that her current physical condition wasn't suitable for the battlefield. If she went, she wouldn't be able to help and would only be a burden. So she made up her mind to recuperate as soon as possible. She watched the back of the big ice cube as it left. The cavalrymen and infantrymen quickly followed. The long road stretched as far as the eye could see. She clasped her hands in front of her chest and prayed for the big ice cube's safe return. Bai Yutong and the others looked at the crowd and howled into the sky. Come back soon. Little C glanced at it in boredom and chirped a few times in a perfunctory manner. Oh, don't be too late. After they left, Chu Qingyan patted their heads and was about to head back when she saw Cheng Yenluo standing behind her. She was stunned for a moment before she scolded, Didn't I tell you not to come out in the wind? Cheng Yenluo retracted her gaze from the army and chuckled. You have to let me out for some fresh air. Otherwise, grass will grow on my head. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but go forward to support her. How are you today? I'm fine now. Don't treat me like a child anymore. I'm a doctor after all, Cheng Yenluo said with some disdain. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. Don't you know what a doctor doesn't treat himself means? Cheng Yenluo shrugged. The two didn't linger on this topic. I heard that you met Big Ice Cube's master at Ci Shui Slope? Cheng Yenluo asked curiously. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that Cheng Yenluo wasn't as absent-minded as she was a few days ago. Now that she asked about it, she thought about it and told her about the playful and adorable side of her beautiful master, which made Cheng Yenluo laugh heartily. Cheng Yenluo wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and patted her shoulder. I didn't expect that such a cold person like Big Ice Cube would have such a funny master who doesn't play by the rules. It's hard to imagine such a combination. Chu Qingyan spread her hands. I was surprised too. I was caught off guard by his appearance. but I like this master very much. He made me feel what it means to live a carefree life in the martial arts world. Cheng Yanluo nodded. Actually, compared to Xiao Su's biological parents, his master is more like his father. Chu Qingyan's smile faded slightly. She sighed. Yes, I'm very glad that he has such a doting master by his side who accompanied him through his dark childhood. Don't worry. He doesn't only have his master by his side now. He also has you, his mother-in-law, and all the companions who have gone through life and death with him. Of course, there will be some flaws in life, but the flaws won't obscure the jade. Cheng Yanluo had always known that the little girl was very concerned about this matter. She couldn't help but remind her when she happened to mention it. Chu Qingyan smiled brightly when she heard this. I know. Thank you, Yanluo. Do you still need to be so polite to me? Cheng Yanluo glared at her impatiently. Chu Qingyan chuckled. Then she felt that something was wrong. She asked, why are you suddenly saying these things to me? It doesn't seem like you. She had been with Cheng Yanluo for a long time and had always been used to her sarcastic teasing. She rarely saw her speak in such a serious manner. She couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Cheng Yanluo raised a hand to touch her forehead. You found out so easily. All right, I do have something to tell you. Chu Qingyan looked at her with an I knew it expression. Cheng Yanluo smiled faintly and said, Little girl, I'm going back to the medical center. I'm afraid I won't be able to help you with the business in Jiangnan in the future. But to be honest, I haven't done anything for you. Chu Qingyan was a little shocked when she heard this. I know that you want to go back to the medical center. Why did you suddenly appear and not care about the business? Didn't you say that making money was your lifelong dream? That was a lie. Didn't I still have high hopes for Murongju at that time? I didn't want others to find out. It just so happened that you needed people to start your business, so I took the initiative to recommend myself. It seems that my deception was very successful. Cheng Yanluo laughed loudly. Chu Qingyan couldn't smile at all. You did succeed. However, the best deception is to deceive yourself first before you can deceive others. So when you were hypnotizing yourself back then, you must have suffered a lot. If you miss me in the future, come to the medical center to look for me. My bastard father threw the medical center to me, so I have to take good care of it for him. Otherwise, he'll scold me again. TSK, I'm obviously not a kind person. How can I be so good at saving people's lives? I really admire myself. Cheng Yanluo rambled on. When she turned her head and saw the little girl about to cry, she was shocked and hurriedly said, Don't cry. I haven't left yet, have I? At the very least, I have to see you finish this big reversal of the battle. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but throw herself at her. Her heart ached, but she couldn't say anything. Cheng Yanluo caught her in a flurry. Finally, the smile on her face gradually faded as she sobbed. Chapter 961. Xiao Su and the others had already arrived at Taishi Cliff with their army. The terrain here was uneven, making it very suitable for an ambush. Pang Huang appeared on top of the mountain with his men and looked down at Xiao Su and the others. His Royal Highness, long time no see. How have you been? Pang Huang took the initiative to greet him as if he was receiving a guest from afar. As soon as Pang Huang's voice fell, the Southern Blue Army sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain. They suddenly appeared around the Sichuan army. Hua Ling and the others immediately took out their weapons and carefully pointed their blades at the enemy. Xiao Su sat on his horse and looked through the layers of enemy troops. He looked at the black-armored Pang Huang and said with a cold expression, Prince of Nansong, I didn't expect you to come. This is to show my respect to your highness. After all, you are the Sichuan war god that every country is afraid of. This prince was afraid that my subordinates would neglect you, so I personally came out to welcome you. Pang Huang smiled and said it in a dignified manner. It was as if he could turn black into white. Xiao Su also said indifferently, I am indebted to your highness for thinking so highly of me. His Royal Highness, this prince has long admired you. I wonder if you can honor us with your presence in our tent? Pang Huang asked in a very sincere tone. Your Highness is too polite. Xiao Su's tone was indifferent. Is His Royal Highness looking down on us for being too small? Speaking of which, you only brought 20,000 men, and we have at least twice as many men. If we compare, it seems like our territory is a bit bigger. Pang Huang said with a fake smile. Many thanks for your Highness' hospitality. However, since you've come all the way from the southern blue continent, this prince must be the one hosting this banquet. Your Highness, why don't you dismount and have a chat? Xiao Su replied. The two spoke across the air. Although their tones were very polite, it was not difficult to feel the swords in their words. It sounded like an invitation between friends, but in reality, Pang Huang was quietly asking for him to surrender. It was obvious that he had brought more people than Xiao Su. Moreover, Xiao Su's reputation was well known outside. The people he had brought along this time were all top experts in the southern blue continent. They were enough to take on 10 people at once. Even if Xiao Su wanted to fight them head-on, it would be like throwing an egg at a rock. A fight between experts only lasted for a moment. However, to Pang Huang's surprise, Xiao Su was still able to talk to him in such an obvious situation. He didn't seem to be panicking at all. This made him a little apprehensive. But when he thought back to his deployment over the past few days, as well as the spies hidden in Sichuan's army, there was simply no flaw to speak of. He didn't know where Xiao Su's confidence came from. He couldn't help but think of the empty fort stratagem that was often used in military tactics. Could it be that Xiao Su was just putting on an act to make him think that he had an ambush? However, he didn't want to expose him at this time. He smiled with interest. We don't need to be modest. This prince heard that your Highness martial arts have already reached the acme of perfection. No one in Sichuan can compare to you. This prince is also someone who loves martial arts. How about we exchange some pointers? Your Highness, this absolutely cannot be done. The southern blue generals who were looking at Sichuan's army with disdain immediately changed their expressions. This was because they remembered the bet between the prince and the youth surnamed Chu in the valley. They couldn't help shivering. Pang Huang raised his hand to stop his subordinates from speaking. He stared at Xiao Su with a serious expression. How about it? Xiao Su crossed his arms and raised his eyebrows. Your Highness seems to be in a good mood. Pang Huang smiled, then his eyes became sharp. Actually, this prince admires one of your subordinates. Her name is Chu Yan. It's a pity that she is too loyal to you. This prince has repeatedly persuaded her, but she is unwilling to abandon the dark and seek the light. So, this prince thought that it would be better to ask your Highness for her. It's just that it's not good to be too direct. How about we exchange some pointers and she goes with whoever wins? It was rumored that the Prince of Nansong always did things as he pleased. He would use any means necessary. Today, it could be said that he had experienced his style of doing things. However, Pang Huang couldn't ask anyone else, but he actually wanted to ask for Xiao Su's treasure. This made Xiao Su want to kill him. Xiao Su gestured to the people beside him. Then he rode his horse forward a few steps. The southern Song soldiers in front of him couldn't help retreating because of this cold killing intent. Xiao Su's action was undoubtedly a response to the challenge. Pang Huang's face rippled with a smile as he took the broadsword from his subordinate's hand. Then he leaped onto the soldier's shoulder and flipped in the air, sending the broadsword directly towards Xiao Su. At this time, Xiao Su flew up and unsheathed the flexible sword at his waist. In an instant, he released an imposing aura. After his broadsword missed, he immediately raised it vertically. Xiao Su was flying down, and the two people's weapons clashed in midair. A bright light suddenly flashed from where the two people clashed, dazzling the eyes of the onlookers. The two of them didn't wait for the crowd to react as they exchanged several moves. Black like a flood dragon, silver like a white light. The two figures were entangled in midair, unable to separate from each other. This was a rare confrontation between experts. The crowd couldn't take their eyes off of it. The two palms separated and the fierce battle came to a temporary stop. Pang Huang had always been very confident in his own martial arts. However, after fighting with Xiao Su for a few rounds, he realized that his opponent's martial arts were above his own. When he was teaching, it seemed that he hadn't used his full strength. Thinking of this, Pang Huang felt that there was no need to continue. There was a faint uneasiness in his heart that kept reminding him. He temporarily suppressed the emotions in his heart and looked up at Xiao Su with a smile. His Royal Highness, if you continue fighting, the sky will be dark. This crown prince remembers a saying, the winner is king and the loser is a bandit. The situation is clear and you don't seem to have a choice. If you can dismount from your horse and surrender, then this crown prince will spare your army's lives. After these words were spoken, the soldiers behind Pang Huang waved their weapons and cheered. On the other hand, Xiao Su's people were very calm. Apart from being on guard against the southern Song soldiers, they didn't show any signs of fear. This made Pang Huang, who had the upper hand, feel a little less proud. Xiao Su's eyes were like torches as he looked at Pang Huang. His expression was as if he was in control of everything. Your Highness, are you sure that your side has more people and my side has less people? Is it not? Pang Huang frowned as the uneasiness in his heart increased. Xiao Su had one hand behind his back and the other holding his sword. Seeing Pang Huang's suspicious expression, he didn't explain and directly told him with his actions. He raised his hand and the dozen soldiers behind him suddenly waved their flags. The southern Song soldiers didn't know what was going on. Shouts came from all directions and echoed in the cliffs. The southern Song army's expression changed. Pang Huang clenched the large blade in his hand and turned his head to look around. He saw that Sichuan's army had suddenly emerged from the terraced cliffs not far away. Originally, they had surrounded Sichuan's army. However, the situation had suddenly changed. They were now sandwiched between Xiao Su and Sichuan's army, unable to move. Chapter 962. Looking around, the entire mountain was filled with Sichuan soldiers. Moreover, there were so many of them that Pang Huang was stunned. What was going on here? While he was confused, a group of soldiers suddenly rushed over from the side. They were covered in blood and were in a sorry state. It was clear that they had just experienced a life-and-death battle. A soldier behind Pang Huang recognized these people and said in surprise, "Isn't this General Lang Lu's deployment? Why are they here?" Lang Lu? Pang Huang immediately angrily looked at them. "Shouldn't you be guarding the provisions in Long Marsh Valley right now?" These soldiers all knelt on the ground and cried out with a mournful expression, "Your Highness, we are indeed General Lang Lu's subordinates. For hours ago, someone pretended to be one of us and infiltrated the valley. They opened the gate when the guards weren't paying attention and let people in. There were many people and they tried to steal from us. Everything happened too suddenly and we didn't have time to resist before we were completely defeated. In the end, General Lang Lu was killed and Long Marsh Valley was taken over. We escaped from death and immediately came to report. The sudden appearance of the Sichuan army, the death of his favorite general, and the theft of his provisions. This series of events happened one after another like dark clouds hanging over Pang Huang's head. He was first shocked, then he understood, and finally he was angry. His eyes swept over Xiao Su, his eyes sharp. "Xiao Su, was this all part of your plan?" His words were questioning, but his tone was certain. Xiao Su did not deny it. "Prince of Nansong, you have set up so many schemes, now you should have a taste of being schemed against." Pang Huang gave a cold laugh. "So your provisions were not burned at all. Everything was just a diversion." "That's right," Xiao Su admitted. "Your goal is to steal my provisions and trap this prince?" Pang Huang faintly felt that it was not that simple. Xiao Su lightly said, "This is only a part of the plan." Pang Huang was stunned. "What?" At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "There's a fire over there. It seems to be the location of our army's camp." In this domineering and arrogant moment, other than the two people who were talking, the rest of the people were silent. So when the words were spoken, everyone heard it clearly. They all looked in the direction of the finger. Thick smoke billowed up. "Not good, it's really coming from the direction of our barracks." One of the deputies turned pale with fright. The provisions were stolen, the generals were killed, and the barracks were attacked. This was like a bolt from the blue. Pang Huang didn't expect himself to turn from the hunter to the prey. However, his strong self-control prevented him from revealing a panicked expression like the soldiers beside him. Instead, he furrowed his brows and looked angrily at Xiao Su. His mind was already working at high speed as he tried to think of a way to escape. Xiao Su, you are indeed smart. It was my carelessness. Pang Huang could no longer maintain a calm facade, so he spoke bluntly. Xiao Su was indifferent. This prince wanted to say this to you during the battle in Jiangning County. Then what are you going to do now? Pang Huang asked. There are two paths. 1, you put down your weapons and surrender. 2, we will beat you until you surrender. Different paths lead to the same destination. This prince believes that the crown prince will make the best choice. Xiao Su raised his chin, his killing intent rising. Surrender? There is no such word in this prince's life. When he finished speaking, Pang Huang restrained his expression. His eyes were like knives. Generals, listen to my order. Kill. The sonorous and forceful words ignited the anger of the southern Song army. They immediately rushed towards the Sichuan soldiers. Xiao Su had already expected that Pang Huang wouldn't surrender so easily. He made a hand gesture, and the soldiers who had been eyeing the southern Song army for a long time couldn't wait to meet them. The hatred of occupying the country. The hatred of having one's family destroyed. The pain of being homeless. At this moment, all of it exploded. Carrying the heavy responsibility of the country, taking revenge for their families, and being hot-blooded for themselves. Sichuan soldiers harbored 1,000 words of hatred and bitterness. They turned it into swords in their hands and unstoppably rushed towards the southern Song army. Who told you to destroy my country? Who told you to kill my friends and family? Who told you to harm me to this extent? There was no enmity between us, but because of your selfish desires, you harmed others and yourself. We will never forgive you. Waves of killing and a sea of blood surged. Sichuan's army was besieged from both inside and outside. They only had twice the manpower of the southern Song army, but the situation was quickly turning one-sided. Pang Huang watched as his side retreated step by step. They didn't have the strength to fight back, and he was full of doubts. Soon after, he thought of the reason. Just now, they were already surrounded by Sichuan's army. How did Lang Lu's subordinates get in? There was only one reason. Xiao Su deliberately let them in. It was to let them know that their provisions had been stolen. His goal was to disturb the morale of the army and then let their main camp be attacked. This was the second strategy to attack the morale of the army. He couldn't help but look at Xiao Su. This person wasn't only good at scheming, he was also good at reading people's minds. Every move he made hit the weakest part of the human heart. If the morale of the army was unstable, then no matter how strong the soldiers were, they would all be defeated. No wonder Imperial Father warned him to be careful of Xiao Su before he led the army. The previous few times he won, it was only because there were spies in the army. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for him to scheme against him. At this moment, a pair of black boots appeared in his vision. He couldn't help but slowly raise his head, only to see Xiao Su standing in front of him with a sword in hand. He chuckled. Even though he was in a dangerous situation, he still had the calm demeanor of a country's crown prince. His Royal Highness, could it be that he's still thinking about the bet from before? Xiao Su lightly pulled the corner of his mouth, his eyes indifferent. That's not it. Chu Yen isn't a commodity that can be casually used as a wager. If you want to recruit talents, courtesy is the most important thing. So on this point, you've lost. Pang Huang's expression became very ugly. He was a person who valued and treated talents with courtesy. Therefore, he had many aides in the southern Song army. Now, with just one sentence from Xiao Su, he had rejected all his efforts in the past. Is that so? Then why were you willing to accept when this crown prince made the bet? In fact, in your heart, Chu Yen is only a chess piece in your hand. Now, it's just an excuse for you to attack this crown prince. In this way, Chu Yen is also very pitiful. Xiao Su looked at him with pity. This king didn't accept the challenge just now. I just wanted to fight with you, that's all. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. His Royal Highness's eloquence is really good. This crown prince concedes defeat. There's no need to concede defeat. Right now, This prince wants you to pick up your sword and fight with this prince fair and square. Xiao Su raised his sword and pointed it at him, his eyes sharp. Pang Huang felt that Xiao Su still chose to fight him alone in this kind of situation. There seemed to be something wrong. Xiao Su, this isn't your style. Xiao Su didn't say anything and attacked first. Pang Huang immediately raised his sword to block. This prince wants to settle the debt of you injuring Chu Yan. Xiao Su's voice was as cold as ice. Pang Huang was shocked. Chapter 963. Just as the battle in the valley was getting intense, the Southern Blue Army had already been surrounded. Xiao Su's two generals, Gao Hao and Jing Guangwei, had joined forces to launch a surprise attack on the enemy. Although there wasn't much difference in manpower, there was a huge difference between taking the initiative to attack and passively defending. Furthermore, Gao Hao and the others had used fire as a surprise attack, leaving the enemy with no way to resist. They could only passively take a beating. Gao Hao and Jing Guangwei sat on horseback and commanded the battle. When they saw the enemy fleeing below, they felt the depression that had been building up in their chests for the past 6 months finally being released. Gao Hao stroked his beard and lamented to Jing Guangwei, "For the past 6 months, we've been beaten by the Southern Blue Army to the point where we couldn't fight back at all. We've suffered heavy losses, and I've often been unable to sleep at night. Sometimes, I would dream of the days when we followed His Highness. We've never been so sullen. We've always been the ones winning. We've always been beaten up like dogs." Jing Guangwei was also touched. He helplessly said, "When the fourth prince took over the army, I had a premonition that the fourth prince had never led an army before. He was simply blindly commanding. Even if he had some ability, in front of a powerful opponent like the Prince of Nansong, he could only be beaten up." Gao Hao nodded repeatedly, then rejoiced. Fortunately, His Highness returned in time and saved the situation. Otherwise, our mountains and rivers would have been trampled by the Southern Blue Army. His Highness is brave and skillful in battle. He's a rare talent. I really don't know what His Majesty is thinking. Why would he treat His Highness like this? For so many years, many of our brothers have been suppressed. I've long been suppressing anger. Now that His Highness has regained control of the army, I really hope that he can lead us again. The army can't do without His Highness, and the Sichuan can't do without His Highness." Jing Guangwei's face was full of hope. "I hope so. Since ancient times, if the emperor wanted his subjects to die, the subjects had no choice but to die. The emperor's thoughts were hard to fathom. His methods were even harder to fathom." Gao Hao was older than Jing Guangwei and knew more than him. His tone carried a faint melancholy. On the cliff where the flames of war raged, Xiao Su came with a menacing aura. He was no longer just defending and not attacking like before. Moreover, every move he made was a killing move. After several moves, Pang Huang found it strenuous to defend. When the two of them separated again, Pang Huang frowned and looked at him. "Why didn't you use your full strength when we were fighting just now?" Pang Huang questioned. Xiao Su chuckled. "This prince still needs your people to inform you, so I still have time to practice a few moves with you." In other words, Xiao Su was only fighting with him to delay the battle between the two armies while waiting for the Southern Blue people to report back. Pang Huang was shocked. This person was simply too frightening. He calculated everything perfectly. It was as if he could summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. Pang Huang forced himself to calm down. He had another question. "You seem to care a lot about Chu Yan?" She cared so much that she didn't hesitate to take action herself. Xiao Su's eyes were cold. He didn't want to talk to him anymore. "You don't need to know this." Pang Huang choked and didn't continue to ask. However, he clearly understood that the situation wasn't optimistic. He knew that if this continued, he wouldn't be able to gain any benefits. There was even a possibility that the entire army would be wiped out. Therefore, his eyes narrowed and he began to think of a way to escape. Then, as if Xiao Su saw through his thoughts, he flew over again. His footsteps were light as wind. In an instant he was right in front of Pang Huang. Pang Huang had no choice but to draw his sword. At this time, the Southern Blue Army was retreating in defeat. There were countless casualties, and their numbers had been reduced by more than half. Pang Huang was disturbed by the people around him and didn't have the heart to continue fighting. He didn't grasp his last move well and was easily blocked by Xiao Su. Before he could react, his weakness was exposed in front of his opponent. Xiao Su attacked him with his palm. Pang Huang couldn't dodge in time and could only lean to the side to avoid being hit. However, the full force of the palm landed heavily on his chest, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was like a kite with a broken string as he flew out. Seeing this, the Southern Blue Army's generals turned pale with fright. They quickly surrounded their prince and helped him up from the ground, asking anxiously. Pang Huang spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. He struggled to raise his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. He felt the strength in his body rapidly drain away. His eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at Xiao Su, who was standing in the middle of the crowd. Under the sunlight, the silver light and the black robe fluttered in the wind. He was like a god of war from the heavens, sacred and inviolable. However, he was like a miserable speck of dust. "Your Highness, this general swears to protect you and send you out safely. If this prince escapes, I will make proper arrangements for your family." Pang Huang's voice was weak, but his majesty was still there. "Your subordinates will kowtow to your highness once again." As soon as the words fell, one of the generals immediately gathered soldiers to block in front of them. They had the other small groups send Pang Huang out while they guarded the surroundings. Xiao Su saw that the Southern Blue Army was blocking in front of him, so he no longer fought Pang Huang alone. He ordered Hua Ling to lead people to intercept them. These people had already disregarded life and death and could be said to be undying death soldiers. They were ruthless and decisive. Even if there were several times more Sichuan soldiers, it would still be difficult to gain an advantage in front of them. Bit by bit, they were forced to the end of the encirclement. As for the soldiers protecting Pang Huang, they were like a snowball. From the beginning, they were gathered together and gradually grew stronger. In the end, they were chased by the Sichuan soldiers and slowly became smaller and smaller. Smoke filled the air and shouts of killing filled the air. After exhausting the lives of many soldiers, they finally broke through the encirclement. Pang Huang passed through the inseparable crowd and swept his gaze over his subordinates who had died on the battlefield. His cold gaze fell on the aloof Xiao Su, who was sitting on the back of a horse, his clothes not stained with blood. "Xiao Su, I swear in the name of the Prince of Nansong, Pang Huang, that as long as I am alive, I will fight you to the death." After taking one last look, Pang Huang withdrew his gaze and coldly ordered, "Let's go." Hua Ling saw that Pang Huang had broken out of the encirclement and immediately turned to ask, "Master, should your subordinates lead people to chase after them?" "No need, don't chase after a cornered enemy." Xiao Su knew that the people beside Pang Huang were the secret guards that he had personally trained. Their martial arts were not below the fierce cavalry. Now that they had killed to protect their master, if he sent people to chase after them, the gains would not make up for the losses. His palm strike just now had almost taken away half of Pang Huang's life. If he did not receive timely treatment, he would not have long to live. Thus, he turned around and commanded the battlefield. Without their commander, the morale of the soldiers was slack. The Southern Song army was defeated like a landslide and was quickly subdued by Xiao Su. Xiao Su ordered people to clean up the battlefield. After half an hour, Fong Lu came to report, "Your Highness, our army lost 3,000 men and 4,000 were injured. As for the 3,000 captives, other than those who escaped, the rest died on the battlefield." This time, the number of casualties was the least. He still had to wait for information about the attack on the Southern Song army camp. "Very good. Withdraw the troops and return." Chapter 964. The Sichuan army had not won a single battle in such a long time. Now, they could finally hold their heads high and march forward in high spirits. Although after Xiao Su regained control of the three armies, the soldiers of Xixian had regained some morale from their defeats, but what really gave them confidence was that they had turned the tables around. Now, their morale was really different. Xiao Su was affected by everyone's mood, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. At this time, reports of victory came in one after another. Jean Xian not only seized all of the Southern Song's frontline provisions, but also captured many Southern Song soldiers. Gao Hao and Jing Guangwei not only beat the Southern Song army to a pulp, but also rescued the soldiers captured by the Southern Song army. In this battle, the firewood under the cauldron was removed. It was simply a beautiful fight. Therefore, standing in the camp, Chu Qingyan and the others returned to the high-spirited army, as well as the peerless silver-clothed war god in the crowd. Chu Qingyan guessed the result when she saw that everyone was beaming with joy despite their injuries. Although she wanted to fly into his arms, she didn't forget the occasion. She resisted the impulse and welcomed him with a smile. There were many people left in the camp, but Xiao Su saw a red-clothed person behind the crowd at a glance. As the commander, he couldn't leave at will. When he came back, he was surrounded by soldiers. He couldn't immediately go to her side, so he could only pass a reassuring smile across the crowd, telling her that he was all right. Chu Qingyan also smiled at him across the crowd. Suddenly, at this moment, she finally understood the feeling of missing in Hongdo to the bone. She didn't know what kind of feeling it was. He was clearly close at hand, but she already missed him to the extreme. Love can make people selfish, but it can also make people learn to be patient. Chu Qingyan stared at the person who was surrounded by stars, and a kind of pride grew in her heart. This was the person she adored. He was indomitable, he was peerless, and most importantly, he loved her equally. Cheng Yanluo stood beside her and looked at her. Ever since Xiao Su appeared, her eyes could no longer contain anyone else. Her eyes were filled with envy. The happiest thing in life was to meet someone in the vast sea of people. The one who knew each other was the one who fell in love with each other in the end. She found him, but he didn't last until the end. The corners of her mouth curled up as she placed a hand on the little fellow's shoulder. She chuckled softly and said, "Little girl, your future husband is a peerless hero." Chu Qingyan could not help but blush. Although she was shy, she still nodded and firmly admitted, "Yes, he is a hero, my hero." In the past, when she watched Stephen Chow's movies, there was a scene where the female lead believed that an unparalleled hero would come to pick her up on a rainbow cloud. At that time, she only smiled and did not take it seriously. In her world, this kind of love did not exist. However, in this place, she experienced what it was like to be filled with happiness, and what it felt like to have a strong arm that she could rely on. Cheng Yanluo smiled gently. "So, little girl, you must grasp the happiness in your hands and live happily ever after." Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. "I will, Yanluo. You will too. Please believe in me." Cheng Yanluo was slightly stunned. Could she still have happiness? She did not know the answer to this question. She wanted to brush it off, but when she looked into the pair of clear eyes in front of her, she nodded. She decided to comfort her for the time being. After waiting for a while, Chu Qingyan realized that Big Ice Cube was still not free. Chu Qingyan thought for a while and decided to go back. She thought that after such an intense battle, Big Ice Cube must be feeling very uncomfortable. Therefore, she decided to do what she could. When she finished boiling water in the tent, she heard the sound of unhurried footsteps. She was very familiar with these footsteps. She turned around abruptly and saw the person standing inside the tent. He had broad shoulders and a lean waist. Dressed in a silver battle robe, he was tall and slender. He was like a ray of white light that descended from the sky. She was simply dazzled. The two of them stood 6 to 7 steps away from each other. Neither of them spoke. They had not seen each other for a day, but it felt like 3 autumns. "What? Don't you recognize me?" Xiao Su was the first to speak. There was a smile in his voice. Hearing this familiar voice and seeing that the person was standing in front of her, Chu Qingyan's eyes started to heat up. She couldn't help but raise her hand to wipe her eyes. She smiled as tears flowed down her cheeks. "Even if you are in disguise or old, I can still recognize you. What's wrong? Did you not close the curtain properly and let the sand in?" Xiao Su felt wronged. He felt that it was impressive that the sand could enter her eyes. Finally, he smiled and opened his arms. He looked at her affectionately. "Come here." Chu Qingyan was still immersed in the thought of crying in front of the big ice block. He would definitely look down on her. When she heard him suddenly speak, she did not react in time. Her face was blank. What? Do what you wanted to do before. Xiao Su looked at her with a smile. Chu Qingyan immediately understood. She did not care about being reserved anymore. 3 steps turned into 2 steps and she threw herself into his arms. When Xiao Su approached, he retracted his arms and hugged her tightly. On this day, his empty heart was finally filled. When he was fighting enemies on the battlefield, he could be calm and unruffled. Every step he took was calculated. When he defeated the enemy, he could still be indifferent. He could see the situation clearly before making a plan. However, these were all his duties, and he had never felt that there was anything to be proud of or complacent about. However, when he returned in triumph and saw the figure of his beloved standing under the tree waiting for him with joy in her eyes, he suddenly found his own meaning for all of this. It turned out that everything was very simple. In order to protect her, in order to ensure her safety in the future. Thus, everything had a new meaning. How did you know that I wanted to do this at that time? Chu Qingyan hugged him tightly. Although her cheeks were a little painful from the armor, she knew that she was not dreaming. Because I can see your eyes. She did not know when it started, but his gaze would often involuntarily stay on her body. Later, it slowly became a habit. Later on, as long as she revealed her emotions, he would be able to see through them. Chu Qingyan heard this and hugged him tightly. This sentence was more lethal than sweet words. Congratulations, Big Ice Cube. You've dealt a heavy blow to the enemy. Congratulations on successfully taking back 2 more cities. From the discussion with the soldiers just now, she knew that after being sent to attack the Southern Blue Camp, they had taken back 2 lost cities. She was sincerely happy for him. This heartwarming congratulation with a sweet smile made him feel more comfortable and happy than the cheers outside. It seemed that he was in a hurry to come back, just to wait for her praise. Xiao Su lowered his head and kissed her lips. It was as if she was his reward, and he was very satisfied. Chapter 965. One must enjoy life to the fullest. For example, at this moment, Xiao Su was not happy because he had won the battle, but because someone was waiting for him when he returned. When he entered the military camp when he was young, with his meticulousness and aptitude, he had never let the other party gain an advantage over him. Thus, to him, victory or defeat was the norm for a military strategist, and there was no need for him to invest too much in it. However, today he finally tasted what it meant to be as if he had found a treasure. All because his efforts were worth it. He tightened his grip on her soft body and deepened the kiss. Since he was young, the heavens had constantly arranged for him to endure hardships and bear responsibilities that did not belong to him at his age, just so that he could go through hardships and meet this little fellow in front of him. Then he would gladly endure all these years of pain. Chu Qingyan could feel his inner emotions from his strength. She could not help but let go of herself, no longer reserved, and accompanied him to enjoy this moment of joy. When they finally separated, Chu Qingyan's legs turned to jelly, and she almost fell. Fortunately, Xiao Su supported her, and muttered to himself, "As expected, your body is still too weak." Chu Qingyan had just stabilized herself, and she almost fell again because of his words. Xiao Su could not help but laugh. Chu Qingyan blushed from his teasing, and she flung his hand away and said angrily, "Hurry up and take a shower. You're all sweaty and you stink." Xiao Su grabbed her wrist and pulled her in front of him, and said innocently, "Is that so? But when I hugged you just now, you didn't even look down on me." Chu Qingyan blushed and lowered her eyes. How could the big ice cube ask such a question? It was too much. Feeling her shyness, Xiao Su chuckled, and raised his hand to hold her chin, and lifted it slightly, making her look into his eyes. At the corner of her eye, there was a red mark on his armor. It was like a bright red flower petal, making it hard for him to look away. He couldn't help but have a thought. He lowered his head and gently kissed the corner of her eye, feeling especially tender. Chu Qingyan felt as though her heart was being filled with a sea of warmth. She closed her eyes tightly, and her eyelashes trembled. Finally, she slowly opened her eyes as he called out to her softly. Pang Huang hurt you. I've already paid him back for you. Xiao Su's tone was the same as usual. He didn't ask for credit, nor was he complacent. It was as if he was describing an ordinary matter. Chu Qingyan was stunned at first, but then she understood what he meant. She blinked. You mean Pang Huang is injured? Xiao Su nodded. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. She pounced on him again, unable to suppress the joy in her heart. It wasn't because of Pang Huang's injuries that made her happy, but because she was touched that someone had stood up for her when she was bullied. Big ice cubes are so good. You don't dislike me now? She shook her head in his arms. Big ice cubes don't stink. They don't stink at all. We smell good. Xiao Su couldn't help but smile. He reached out and hugged her. The two of them were lovey-dovey for a while. Xiao Su was urged to wash up. After calming down, Chu Qingyan was bored. She sat on a chair and flipped through the Heart Sutra that her beautiful master had left for her. The sword moves that her beautiful master had practiced for her. Because of her body, she couldn't practice with a sword yet. However, she recalled them in her mind. Very quickly, those sword moves were engraved in her mind. It had to be said that this Heart Sutra was very useful for martial artists. She had only practiced the first section, but she already felt a warm current flowing through her body. Every time it passed through a meridian, she felt comfortable, as if something had been opened. The injury on her chest also didn't seem to be that uncomfortable. She was in a very good mood. She continued to immerse herself in reading the Heart Sutra. Then, she closed her eyes and circulated another cycle. Xiao Su finished washing up and came out. He saw the person sitting on the couch with her eyes closed. He stopped and leaned against a pillar to look at her. His eyes were like water. A simple and elegant face, a peaceful expression. Her black hair was tied up, revealing a swan-like neck. She was elegant and calm. She casually sat on the couch with her eyes closed. The corner of her mouth was slightly raised. It was like a beautiful picture. When he looked at her, his heart was peaceful. At this time, he felt that the slaughter and blood were no longer entangled in his heart like before. Because every time he finished a battle, he wanted to lock himself in a sealed space. He wanted to force himself to forget the blood that filled the sky, the billowing smoke, and the desperate slaughter. His master had told him that because he came into contact with this kind of situation too early, he developed a heart demon. Fortunately, his heart was firm and he didn't go crazy. If he wanted to let go of his heart demon, there was no way to rely on it. Everything depended on luck. At this time, he suddenly woke up. It seemed that this time he was no longer entangled by those things. It seemed that after meeting the little fellow, his state of mind became more and more peaceful. He was no longer as worried as before. Perhaps, this was the chance that his master talked about. He couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth and smile softly. His master was right. The little fellow was his salvation. When Chu Qingyan finished circulating her energy and opened her eyes, a night demon barged into her eyes. He was wearing a white inner robe and a black outer robe loosely covered with a black outer robe. He didn't use a belt to tie it up. His black hair fell on his shoulders, still dripping with water. He looked unrestrained, as if he was looking at an otherworldly visitor on a boat on the river. His green robe was unbuttoned and he looked natural and unrestrained. It was rare to see him show such a natural and unrestrained side. Chu Qingyan was a little stunned. Big ice block. If you had an extra fan in your hand and a jug of wine at your waist, you would really be like an otherworldly visitor. Xiao Su smiled, expressing his helplessness towards a certain person's strange ideas. He then walked towards her. Chu Qingyan laughed mischievously. Seeing that his hair was still wet, she took a cloth towel from the side. When he sat down, she leaned over and carefully wiped his hair for him. After so many years, he had already gotten used to her preparing clothes for him. Occasionally, she would take care of his daily life on a whim, so he didn't stop her. Her slender and gentle fingers ran through his hair, making his tense nerves gradually relax. He lowered his head and saw the Heart Sutra spread out on the couch. He casually asked, "Can you understand the contents of the book?" Chu Qingyan was envious of his soft hair in her heart when she suddenly heard his question. She was a little confused. When she followed his line of sight, she realized that he was asking about the Heart Sutra. She smiled and nodded. The first few sections are relatively simple. I can understand them. However, the later sections seem to be more profound. I flipped through a few pages and it was a little difficult to read. However, it's not that difficult to understand. Anyway, if I don't understand, I can still ask you for help. Xiao Su nodded. His master was right. The little fellow was a martial arts material. She was smart and her comprehension ability was not bad. The light of the lantern, the soft whispers, and the soft smile. He couldn't help but think of 4 words: the years are peaceful. Chapter 966. Compared to the Sichuan celebration, the Southern Blue Army was dismal. Pang Huang was rescued by his subordinates. When he was finally sent back, there were only 3 or 4 shadow guards by his side. He was seriously injured and vomited blood. As soon as they returned to the camp, everyone was in a mess. They looked for the military doctor and boiled water. It was a complete mess. The military doctor hurried in. He examined Pang Huang's injuries and immediately took out a secret medicinal pill for him to consume. When he checked Pang Huang's pulse, it had stabilized. He let out a heavy sigh. His Highness the Crown Prince's life is saved. On the side, Rei Luo also felt relieved. He asked, "It's all thanks to the military doctor. When will His Highness wake up?" The military doctor touched his chin and looked troubled. His Highness suffered an extremely serious internal injury. Fortunately, this old man had the 9 transformations soul recovery pill to protect His Highness's heart. The medicine is already taking effect. It should take at least half a day for him to wake up. If he wants to recover completely, he needs to be nourished with medicine for at least 49 cycles. Rei Luo was shocked. Then what about our plan? The military doctor shook his head. This old man doesn't understand marching and fighting. Hey, is His Highness awake? The military doctor's words attracted everyone's attention. They all looked at the bed. Pang Huang moved his fingers and slowly opened his eyes. He was a little confused for a moment, but he quickly recovered and sat up with difficulty. Where is this? Your Highness, this is our temporary camp. Rei Luo immediately stepped forward to support him. Pang Huang remembered his previous defeat. Anger surged in his heart. His blood was not flowing smoothly, and he quickly coughed again. The military doctor quickly said, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, please don't be angry. Otherwise your blood may flow backwards. Think about it and keep a calm mind." When the military doctor finished speaking, several generals echoed. Pang Huang's head was a little dizzy. He frowned. "Shut up." The tent, which had been bustling with noise, suddenly quieted down. Pang Huang calmed down and raised his hand to touch his forehead. "What time is it now? How's the army?" "It's already 9 in the morning. Our men have suffered heavy losses. The 80,000 soldiers we sent out today were either killed or captured. The army was ambushed. Apart from those who died in battle, there are still 220,000 of them." Hearing this number, Pang Huang's face turned frightening and his eyes turned red. When he had come to Sichuan from the southern Blue Continent, he had brought 400,000 soldiers with him. When he had fought with Xiao Ran, he hadn't lost many soldiers. But now, he had lost more than 100,000 soldiers in a single confrontation with Xiao Su. This simply made people want to tear Xiao Su into pieces. Pang Huang swallowed the blood in his throat and clenched his fists. "Xiao Su, I didn't die on the battlefield, which means that I'm not fated to die. Now, it's my turn to collect my debt from you. For the sake of these 100,000 soldiers, I'll let you have a taste of destruction. Men, bring me the map." No one dared to disobey Pang Huang's order. Soon, the map of Sichuan was spread out in front of Pang Huang. "Where is Sichuan's army now?" Pang Huang asked coldly. "It's near Longxiang County and Qingqiao City. It's more than 15 kilometers away from Longxiang County and Qingqiao City," one of the soldiers replied. "But, Qingcheng, if you were Xiao Su, Which city would you go to? Pang Huang covered his mouth and coughed lightly. Qing Cheng stepped forward and walked to the map. After thinking for a moment, he said, if Sichuan's army intends to go to Longxiang County, they must pass through a river. However, there have been several heavy rains recently, causing the water level to rise and the current to be rapid. It's not suitable for boats. This one feels that they definitely won't take this risk. This one also thought of something. Among the captives rescued by Sichuan, there was a deputy general of Qingchao City. Therefore, this one believes that they should be heading to Qingchao City. After Qing Cheng finished his analysis, Pang Huang nodded. You're right. Sichuan just won a battle and seriously injured our army. They won't take risks now and will probably choose to advance steadily. After thinking for a moment, Pang Huang raised his head and swept his gaze over the crowd. Who is the current general of Qingchao City? How many men and horses are there currently? Lei Luo stepped forward and replied, it's General Fuyu. He currently has 10,000 soldiers and horses. Pang Huang made a sound of acknowledgement. Then, his gaze landed on one of the generals in the tent. Although his face was pale and his voice was weak, the prestige he had accumulated over a long period of time instantly filled the tent. Feng Chen, do you know your crime this time? The one who was named was the general who had led the troops to sneak attack the provisions that Jin Xian was escorting. Ever since he learned that the provisions that were burned were only a trick of Sichuan's, he began to tremble with fear. He was afraid that His Highness the Crown Prince would hold him accountable. Now, the thing he worried about had finally happened. Feng Chen's legs went soft and he knelt down. Your Highness the Crown Prince, this subordinate knows his mistake. In fact, although Xiao Su's scheme this time was very meticulous and flawless, if his people had been a little more careful, they wouldn't have suffered such heavy losses this time. Seeing Feng Chen admit his crime, Pang Huang had the urge to kill him with 1,000 cuts. However, after falling into the trap this time, the morale of the army was already lax. If he punished the general, the morale of the army would be even more unstable. Pang Huang could only let him go for now. You deserve death for this crime. Unfortunately, we need people at this time, so I'll keep this score in mind. Now, I'll give you a chance to atone for your crimes. I'll give you 30,000 soldiers and horses. Go to Qingchao City and support Fuyu. Feng Chen, who was originally kneeling and waiting for death, didn't expect that His Highness the Crown Prince would give him a chance. He kowtowed in gratitude. Thank you, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Thank you, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Pang Huang was very impatient. When he saw him, he waved his hand and ordered him to go and prepare. Then, Pang Huang began to give orders to assign tasks. Now that the casualties were heavy, he had to appease all sides. Thus, one by one, he arranged for the generals to be assigned. After another general left, only Lei Luo and Qing Cheng were left in the accounting room. Pang Huang took the tea to moisten his thirsty throat. Then, he looked at the two confidants in front of him with a heavy gaze. This crown prince is very unwilling to be defeated by Xiao Su this time. I must get back at him. Xiao Su and the others can only be proud for a while. They won't be proud forever, Lei Luo comforted. Pang Huang snorted and took a deep breath. Then, with a bloodthirsty expression, he said, this time, I'll use Qingchao City as bait. This crown prince will make Xiao Su unable to return. Your Highness the Crown Prince already has a brilliant plan? Qing Cheng asked in surprise. That's right. This crown prince remembers that I brought a lot of gunpowder to Sichuan this time. Now it can be considered to be put to use. When the time comes, this crown prince will learn from Zhuge and use the empty city strategy. Let's see if he dares to accept the challenge. Pang Huang smiled coldly. Before Lei Luo could react, Qing Cheng had already guessed the crown prince's plan. No wonder the crown prince wanted Feng Chen to defend the city. It turned out that he didn't want him to perform meritorious deeds, but to accept his death. Chapter 967. The next day, Sichuan main tent. A map of Sichuan was spread out in the middle of the tent. Xiao Su stood in front of it, his finger pointing upwards. Our army is currently in this position. What do you all think we should do next? Gao Hao stroked his beard with a serious expression. Your Highness, this general feels that the Southern Blue Army's strength has been greatly damaged. We should take advantage of our victory and pursue them. Qingchao City is the closest to our army, so we can set our target there. First, we'll recover Qingchao City, then move on to Jiasong County, on Long Harbor, and other cities. Gao Hao's words received the approval of the majority. As Chu Qingyan's body had recovered well, she also participated in the meeting today. She felt that Gao Hao's words made sense, so she added, the Southern Blue Army's commander is heavily injured, and they've lost nearly half of their troops. Their rations can't be replenished in time, so we should say that their morale is very low. We shouldn't give them time to breathe and take advantage of the situation to beat them up. This will allow us to achieve twice the result with half the effort. If we choose Qingchao City, we'll be able to tear a hole in their defenses. She had studied the Southern Blue Army's defenses. Currently, Qingchao City was the outermost line of defense. If they could break through this line, then it would be much easier to recover the other cities. That's right, Your Highness. We've rescued Qingchao City's Deputy General, Xing Cheng. He's very familiar with Qingchao City. We can understand the current situation through him and discuss how to seize the city. Jing Guangwei stood out and suggested. Xiao Su nodded. Since no one has any objections, then we'll decide on Qingchao City as our next target. Bring Xing Cheng in. We'll first understand the current situation of Qingchao City. The meeting lasted until noon, when everyone was dismissed for lunch. They then decided to set off for Qingchao City in the afternoon. In the end, only Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan were left in the tent. It was only today that Chu Qingyan saw Jean Xen in the tent after he bid farewell to her the last time. She felt that Jean Xen had been tanned recently, but he looked more energetic. However, his arms were tied with a white gauze, and there were a few cuts on his face. Chu Qingyan immediately felt her heart ache. She felt as if her own child had been raised well at home, but was beaten up when he went out. She felt a little upset. At this moment, only she and Big Ice Cube were left. She sighed and said with pity, seeing that Jean Xen is injured makes my heart ache. Xiao Su was in the middle of writing a memorial when he heard her words. He paused and looked up at her. If you want him to be successful, you have to be prepared for him to suffer and get hurt. Chu Qingyan snorted when she heard that. Of course you would think that way. Hua Ling and the others must have suffered a lot under your hands. Xiao Su's eyes were indifferent. I'm just teaching them the ability to survive. If they don't have the skills to dodge and seize the opportunity to attack, they will die sooner or later because of their own negligence. Also, didn't I come here like this? Big Ice Cube's words startled her. She couldn't help but fall silent. Although she had lived in this ancient era for so many years, she still had a modern mindset in her bones. This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak, not the peaceful 21st century. Xiao Su wrote a few words and realized that the person in front of him didn't speak. He looked up again and realized that she was standing there in a daze. He thought that his words were too harsh, so he muttered to himself for a moment. Jean Xian is injured, and you're so worried. If our child fell down when he went out, wouldn't you cry? Xiao Su's words carried a teasing smile. What the hell? Chu Qingyan immediately looked up and glared at him. The child hasn't been born yet. Is there a father who curses him like this? Wait, why was Big Ice Cube laughing so strangely? There seemed to be something wrong. You who wants to give birth to your child. Her face instantly turned as red as the morning sun. After she said this, she saw the person sitting behind the table laugh even more. She felt the entire tent become hot. She stomped her feet and decided to ignore him. She gave a heavy snort and charged out of the tent, leaving the unrestrained laughter behind her. When Chu Qingyan came out, she almost bumped into Hua Ling, who was about to walk in. Hua Ling was originally in a rush, but when he saw the little princess face turn red and heard his master's laughter in the tent, he couldn't help imagining his master teasing the little princess. The scene was too beautiful and he didn't dare think about it. Young master, where are you going? Hua Ling asked while holding back his laughter. How could Chu Qingyan not understand the smile in his eyes? She was about to explode in anger. It was fine if she was teased by Big Ice Cube, but now she was being teased by his subordinate. Life was too bitter. It's nothing. What about you? Why are you in such a rush? Chu Qingyan replied in an uncomfortable voice. With this reminder, Hualing finally remembered why he came here. His expression became a bit anxious. Young master, this subordinate heard that Miss Qing was packing her luggage and was preparing to leave the camp. I immediately came to report to you. Chu Qingyan was shocked. Yen Luo had only told her about this matter 2 days ago and she never thought it would be so fast. She couldn't help feeling a bit anxious, but before this, she had some questions. Speaking of this, shouldn't Ethereal be the one worried about this matter? I remember that you and him are enemies, right? Why are you the one worrying about this? Hualing gave a deep sigh. That block of wood, only thinking about what's good for others. This subordinate can't stand him because he's always so selfless and doesn't think about himself. So, this subordinate wanted to go against him to see if he would be angry. Who would have thought that a block of wood would be a block of wood? No matter how I tormented him, he wouldn't care and would at most say a few words. If he fought with this subordinate to vent his anger, that would also be good. It's a pity that he doesn't understand. Hearing Hualing's sad words, Chu Qingyan's forehead couldn't help sweating. To have Ethereal fight with someone whose martial arts weren't on the same level as him, wasn't that just asking for a beating? If it was a competition of medical skills, Ethereal would probably be more willing. However, Hualing's words made Chu Qingyan have a whole new level of respect for him. She originally thought that he and Ethereal didn't like each other and liked to compare everything. Now that she heard it, there were actually other reasons. Perhaps, this was what brothers were like. They normally teased each other and didn't like each other, but when something happened, they didn't even think about standing up for each other. This kind of relationship was even more enviable. She heard him continue, Miss Cheng wants to leave, so Ethereal must be upset. It's just that he doesn't say anything. I can't stand his cowardly appearance, so I came to find young master and hope that you can persuade Miss Cheng. Although this subordinate feels good seeing Ethereal upset, I still feel that he shouldn't be upset. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. These two people really make people worry. Alright, I'll go check on Yen Luo. It's chaotic right now and she's not alone. Alright, then I'll have to trouble young master. Hualing rubbed his head and left with a grin. Chu Qingyan looked at his back and smiled, then turned and walked towards Yen Luo's tent. Chapter 968. When Chu Qingyan approached Qing Yenluo's tent, she happened to see her packing her luggage. Yen Luo, what are you doing? Chu Qingyan walked in front of Yen Luo and placed her hand on Yen Luo's bag. Cheng Yen Luo smiled at her when she saw her. Didn't you see it? I plan to leave this place. You didn't even discuss it with me. If someone hadn't told me, would you have snuck away? Chu Qingyan sounded a little disappointed. Cheng Yen Luo was silent for a moment. When she raised her head, her lips were already curled into a faint smile. Didn't you already know? Besides, didn't I tell you before? Yen Luo, there's a war outside. I don't feel at ease with a girl like you wandering around alone. You should at least wait for me to arrange for someone to escort you back. Otherwise, what should I do if something happens? Chu Qingyan sighed heavily at the end. Cheng Yen Luo pursed her lips. Finally, she patted the little girl's arm and comforted her. I've been wandering outside for so many years. I can still protect myself. You don't have to worry about me. I don't believe that you can't even defeat me with your mediocre skills. Chu Qingyan huffed. A row of crows flashed across Qing Yenluo's head. Please, how could her martial arts be compared to hers? She was personally trained by Xiao Su and had so many training partners by her side. Of course, her martial arts were miles ahead of hers. However, she also knew that the little girl was being kind. She couldn't help but soften her tone. I'll have to leave sooner or later. It doesn't matter if I leave sooner or later. You don't have to keep me. Since Yen Luo had already put it this way, Chu Qingyan could not force her to stay any longer. Her idea of matchmaking Yen Luo and Kong Ling had fallen through. At this point, she took a step back. Fine, I won't stop you if you want to leave. However, you're going back to the medical center. When you reach Qingqiao City, I'll send someone to escort you back to the medical center. Otherwise, I won't feel at ease. During the previous battle with the Southern Blue Army, many of the Southern Blue soldiers had fled and were scattered in the vicinity. If Yen Luo were to travel alone, she would inevitably encounter them. For her safety, this was the only way. Seeing her determined expression, Qing Yenluo had no choice but to compromise. She raised her hand and pinched her face to vent her anger. Forget it, forget it. I'm afraid of you, you wretched girl. Seeing that she was no longer in a hurry to leave, Chu Qingyan finally heaved a sigh of relief. At this time she smiled. I brought you here. No matter what, I have to send you back safely. Otherwise, how can I live up to our years of friendship? Instead of saying that, I'd rather call you Manager Auntie. You want to manage everything. You'll die of exhaustion sooner or later. Cheng Yenluo rolled her eyes at her, but her heart was filled with warmth. Chu Qingyan only smiled and didn't refute her words. She reached out and hugged Yenluo's arm, sighing softly. If we part like this, I don't know when we'll meet again. That depends on when you'll beat the crap out of Southern Blue and make them piss their pants. Thinking that she wouldn't be able to see the little girl and the rest for a while, Qing Yenluo felt a little reluctant to part. How can war be so easy? In the past, when I wasn't personally on the battlefield, I thought that as long as I had the right time, place, and people, I could quickly defeat the enemy. Only when I'm on the battlefield do I realize that it's very difficult to gather all three. Chu Qingyan sighed. Cheng Yenluo couldn't help but feel sorry for her. It's been hard on you little girls. You bear the heavy responsibility of saving the country. I'll pray for you in my heart. Chu Qingyan smiled at her with curved eyes. Evil can't prevail over good. We'll win. Sichuan, the capital. Hugua Temple. Tathagata Buddha sat in the center of the temple with a serene expression. He held Buddhist prayer beads in his hand and looked at the underworld with pity in his eyes. Under the lotus seat, there was an elegant monk dressed in a green robe. He held Buddhist prayer beads in one hand and a wooden mallet in the other, looking at a wooden fish. The fragrance of sandalwood rose in spirals, and the sound of chanting could be heard. Just by standing here for a moment, one would feel that one's soul was clear and bright. The room was quiet. Apart from the low chanting and the sound of the wooden fish, there was no other sound. The heart was free of distracting thoughts. The six senses were pure, and the four elements were empty. At this moment, the little novice monk who usually followed him walked in and knelt on a futon. He stole a glance at the person beside him and then closed his eyes. Buang, have you finished your homework? Su Jian asked. Buang immediately opened his eyes wide. Beside him, his master's eyes were still closed. If he hadn't heard that question, he would have thought that his master hadn't said anything. Buang said somewhat guiltily, I've finished. A monk doesn't lie. Let me ask you again. Have you really finished? Su Jian slowly opened his eyes and looked at him with a clear gaze. Buang hurriedly prostrated himself. Buang knows his mistake. Today, you'll be punished by copying the scriptures 3 times. You're not allowed to bargain, Su Jian said indifferently. Buang's face was bitter. Yes, master. Su Jian looked at his scrunched-up little face and couldn't help but chuckle. This was the little disciple he'd taken in this year, and also his first disciple. Nansong invaded and seized cities, causing many people to lose their homes and become homeless. He'd picked up Buang from the streets. His parents had both died at the hands of the Nansong people. Su Jian had originally wanted to ask someone to take care of him, but Buang was afraid of strangers and didn't want to leave him. In addition, his eyes were very similar to the little girl who'd rejected him back then. He didn't know why, but he wanted to keep him. Buang had been following him for half a year now. His temperament was unstable, and he was easily attracted by external things. However, he was still a child, so he could teach him slowly. After receiving his punishment, Buang no longer felt burdened. He was only a 5 or 6-year-old child, so he immediately threw his worries to the back of his mind and asked in a childish voice, Master, that female benefactor you mentioned before, is she out of danger now? Su Jian's fingers paused as he fiddled with the prayer beads. His gaze fell on the snow-white porcelain bottle and he slowly said, "She's out of danger." He hadn't forgotten that he'd only divined that she was in danger, but not the outcome. For the next few days, he didn't forget to calculate again. It wasn't until early one morning that he calculated that she was safe. At this time, his fingers unconsciously closed together again. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. Benefactor Chu was facing another calamity? Buwang kept looking at his master. When he saw that his master's expression wasn't right, he couldn't help but ask, "Master, what's wrong?" Su Jian looked at Buwang with a strange expression. "I'm afraid that female benefactor you mentioned just now is about to meet another calamity." "Master, why is she facing so many calamities?" Buwang was very puzzled. "Maybe it's because her identity isn't ordinary." Su Jian sighed. An outsider from outside the world had barged into this world that didn't belong to her. She was going against fate, so she faced endless calamities. However, Su Jian tapped his fingers again, as if something was wrong. Chapter 969. Su Jian sensed that something was amiss. While he was meditating, he didn't forget to mutter to himself, "Master, what do you mean her identity is not ordinary? Will she still be in danger in the future?" Perhaps because it was rare to see his master in such a difficult position, Buwang mustered up his courage to ask. Su Jian turned his gaze to Buwang, his eyes devoid of joy or sorrow. "Because some people belong here and some don't. Therefore, I can't divine this female benefactor's fate every time, because that's going against the heavens." Buwang was still young, so he didn't quite understand what his master meant. He tilted his head and asked, "Will the female benefactor leave this place in the future?" His master probably meant that she didn't belong here. Su Jian looked at the vast sky with rolling clouds outside the door, his expression blank. "I don't know either." The lives of the people around her had changed because of her appearance, so their fates were all messed up. It was hard to divine what kind of person they would be in the future. This was especially so for Xiao Su. He should have passed away a few years ago, but because of Chu Qingyan's appearance, the trajectory of his life changed. He did not die, and the star that belonged to him became brighter and brighter. It was almost as bright as the Emperor's star. To Xishuan, he didn't know whether this was good or bad. But one thing was for sure, his existence was a blessing to the common people. He actually had something to ask his master about. Buwang blinked and asked, "Will the female benefactor encounter any more danger?" Su Jian's gaze fell on him, a solemn look in his eyes. "Yes. In the near future, she will encounter a life and death calamity." But just like before, he couldn't divine whether she would succeed in overcoming the calamity. Was he not capable enough, or was this really something difficult to divine? He couldn't help but recall what she had said to him back then. "My fate is in my own hands, not in the hands of the heavens." This was an extraordinary woman. He didn't know how much she had grown after so many years. Buwang was a little anxious when he heard this. Will anything happen to her? Perhaps because he had suffered the loss of his family, Buwang subconsciously didn't want others to be hurt like him. Su Jian placed his hand on his head and smiled faintly. "The heavens are benevolent. She has experienced so many life and death situations. I believe she will be able to turn misfortune into blessing." Buwang nodded repeatedly. Su Jian raised his head slightly and looked into the distance. "You've been creating miracles, so keep it up." After 2 days, the army finally climbed mountains and waded through rivers. They arrived in a forest 10 li away from Qingqiao City and set up camp there. Reporting to the general, according to the spies, there were originally only 10,000 guards in the city. Now, there are 30,000 more reinforcements. A soldier reported, "Looks like this Prince of Nansong also predicted that we would attack Qingqiao City first." Fang Lu expressed his opinion. Gao Hao felt quite confused. Since they knew that we would come here, why did they only send 30,000 reinforcements? This doesn't make sense. Jing Guangwei replied, "Maybe it's because they couldn't fight back after being beaten by us last time. Now that they have no time to spare, They can only send these people. Everyone nodded, feeling that it made sense. At this moment, Xiao Su asked, "Who's the general guarding the city now?" Xing Cheng, the deputy general of Qingqiao City, stepped forward and replied, "Originally, there was one called Fu Yu. Now, there's another called Feng Chen." As soon as he finished speaking, Jin Xian also stepped forward. "This Feng Chen. I fought with him at 7 Mile Cliff. He's a bit of a grandiose person." Xiao Su looked at Xing Cheng. "You're more familiar with the city. Analyze the terrain first." Xing Cheng was already prepared. He immediately said, "Because Qingqiao City is surrounded by mountains on both sides, there are only city gates on the east and west. Because of the mudslide a few years ago, the officials in charge of Qingqiao City built the city walls very high. Thus, it's not suitable for a sneak attack. We can only force our way in from the outside." Xiao Su nodded, his mind working quickly. Then he said, "Who's willing to attack the city this time?" As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Lu, Xing Cheng, and Jin Xen all stepped forward. "Your subordinates are willing to lead the troops to attack the city." Chu Qingyan glanced at Jin Xian's injured arm, a little worried. Xiao Su looked at them with satisfaction. After a while, he ordered, "Fang Lu is experienced in battle. As the main general, Xing Cheng, you're familiar with Qingqiao City. You'll be the deputy general to assist Fang Lu. Jin Xian, you're new to the army. Although you haven't been in the army for long, you're good at adapting. This time, you'll be the deputy general to assist Fang Lu." The three of them bowed and accepted the order. "Your subordinates obey." With the plan and personnel confirmed, Xiao Su ordered people to make preparations. After recuperating, they could attack the city the next day. It was already close to night. Other than the sound of soldiers moving about, there was only the sound of cicadas and frogs croaking. In such a forest, the sounds rose and fell without stopping. Chu Qingyan stood at the edge of the tent, looking up at the full moon above her head thoughtfully. After standing for a while, her legs felt a little numb. When she withdrew her gaze, she saw a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. She composed herself and met a pair of deep and serene eyes. She couldn't help but curve the corners of her mouth. He was the frozen autumn moon in the forest. He was the pearl of the night. Just by standing there, he was a scenery that people couldn't look away from. She wanted to walk towards him, but saw him give a few instructions to the guards beside him, then slowly walked towards her. It was already the beginning of summer, and the air was hot and dry. However, she watched him walk over, the corners of his clothes moving without wind. His black hair fluttered behind his back. Every step he took was so unhurried, carrying the clear glow of the moonlight. It was like a refreshing wind blowing in her face. People couldn't help but want to hold their breath, afraid to disturb this picturesque scene. When he walked in front of her, she still hadn't regained her senses. The silver armor in front of her, under the moonlight, reflected the warm light. She couldn't help but raise her head to look at him. Stunned, Xiao Su raised his eyebrows slightly. The little fellow's dazed look was ignorant and cute. It really made people want to hug her and ravage her. "Big Ice Cube, have you heard of the Book of Songs? There's a saying that goes, if there's a bandit gentleman, it's like comparing notes." Under the light of the leaves, under the layers of shadows, the person standing there was bright and moving. She was charming and charming. Her starry eyes were bright and rippling. She was dressed in red men's clothing, but it couldn't hide her splendor. Only she was smiling unknowingly. Xian Mo's eyes slowly deepened. Under the moonlight, there was a glazed light, making people unable to see his true expression. He was thinking if only they weren't in the military camp. He wanted to kiss her eyes. "I'm very happy that you're praising me." He curled his lips. Chu Qingyan was stunned when she heard this. Then she said in a bad mood, "Where's your face?" Others praising him and him praising himself were two different concepts. All right. Xiao Su smiled and instantly looked at the person in front of him. Chapter 970. This smile was like fireworks blooming in the sky, ethereal and gorgeous. In an instant, it filled her eyes and even her entire heart. Big Ice Cube, you're not allowed to smile in front of anyone other than me in the future. She came back to her senses and blamed herself for not being able to live up to expectations. After being together for so many years, she still wasn't used to it and was still enchanted by him. However, she was even more vigilant. Even if she was by his side day and night, she couldn't escape his charm, so there was no need to mention anyone else. So, she deliberately put on a fierce look. Xiao Su expressed that he didn't care and was very willing to go along with her. He really couldn't think of anyone else that was worth him caring about other than the little fellow. If these words fell into the ears of other men, they would have a falling out with her. Chu Qingyan was very satisfied with the Big Ice Cube's response. Actually, the Big Ice Cube had a mask on his face. If he didn't speak or smile, just by standing there, it was enough to enchant a large group of people. Of course, beauty was in the eye of the beholder. She wanted to hide him, but she also didn't want others to see his magnificence. It really was a contradiction. Let's go for a walk? He was still not used to talking about love in front of everyone. After all, the little fellow's identity was still a man and he couldn't expose her. This change in style was too fast and she couldn't understand it. Was the Big Ice Cube inviting her on a date? His heart was thumping wildly. Her face was red as she gave a soft cough. This night isn't bad, it's good to go for a walk. Xiao Su did not expose her words as he followed behind her with a smile. Fong Lu, who was feeding the horses in the distance, saw the two of them standing by the fire. He couldn't help asking Hualing, who was beside him, "Who is this little brother Chu? I found that His Highness treats him very differently. I've never seen His Highness this gentle before." Hualing followed his gaze and laughed. He silently cursed in his heart. You didn't see his master's gentle appearance, he was simply being intimate with the little princess. However, he couldn't say these words in front of Fong Lu. Otherwise, if it reached his master's ears, he might be sent to the mountains. Young Master Chu is young and promising. Master is a person who cherishes talents, that's why she treats him differently. Don't think too much about it. Hualing patted his shoulder and said vaguely. Then he was afraid that he would ask something he couldn't answer, so he immediately ran away. Fong Lu nodded. He admired her from the bottom of his heart. When he was her age, he was still a young boy who didn't know anything. After he sent Hualing off, his eyes moved back to where they were. He felt that the two of them standing together were very pleasing to the eye, but when he thought of their identities, he couldn't help but shiver. His Highness wasn't a homosexual. He immediately slapped himself on the mouth and led the horse to another place to feed it, running faster than a hare, lest his thoughts should be discovered. Stabbed to death. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan had already walked far away from the barracks and arrived at a desolate place. Because of today's full moon, the sky was especially clear. The clouds were thin, like a thin veil in the sky. As long as you were willing to look, you could see the blue sky behind the white veil. Just now, what were you thinking about? Xiao Su was standing at the top of the mountain as he suddenly turned to look at her. Chu Qingyan was still playing with the branch in her hand. Hearing this, a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. She knew that the Big Ice Cube was asking about what happened in the camp, but when she raised her head, her eyes were filled with a smile. Nothing, I wasn't thinking about anything at that time. As soon as she finished speaking, the person in front of her suddenly leaned forward and locked his eyes with hers. She couldn't help but lean back. When she couldn't take it anymore, he reached out and grabbed her waist. He sighed helplessly and helped her stabilize her body. You think I don't know if you're telling the truth or not? The two of them were very close right now. As long as she raised her head, she could touch his chin, but she was feeling guilty right now and only dared to touch his chest. How could I? She spoke with a weak voice. At this moment, Xiao Su's hand landed on the top of her head. His voice suddenly became gentle. Do you miss your parents? Chu Qingyan's eyes widened and she immediately looked up. You know. Xiao Su smiled gently. That's why I said, don't lie to me. My heart is a mirror. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips, but she was still very impressed. He was as meticulous as dust and could see the big picture from small details. That was why such a person could become the leader of the Sichuan army and lead the army to expel those brutal invaders. She no longer denied it and leaned against his chest, her voice soft, a little. Recently, she had been so busy with the war that she didn't even know if her parents were doing well in Jiangnan, whether they were eating well and wearing warm clothes. Actually, she didn't have to worry about these things at all because she had arranged for people to stay behind. Big Ice Cube also had people there, and Xiao would take care of them, so her parents would definitely be doing well. It was just that when a son was thousands of miles away, his mother would be worried. When their parents weren't by their side as children, they would also be worried. It was only natural. However, she didn't want to show these emotions on her face for fear of increasing Big Ice Cube's burden. He was already very busy, so she didn't want to add to his troubles. However, he still found out. She was a little defeated. If this war goes well, we will be back soon. Xiao Su knew what was on her mind and said firmly. Chu Qingyan nodded when she heard this. She knew that Big Ice Cube wouldn't lie. Big Ice Cube, did you miss home when you were on the battlefield in the past? Perhaps the atmosphere was too relaxed, so she spoke without thinking. Big Ice Cube's parents had always been a topic she carefully avoided, afraid that she would mention Big Ice Cube's sad memories. Now that she had said it, she was a little regretful and couldn't help but secretly look at his expression. However, the person in front of her looked the same as before and didn't change because of her words. She heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that he didn't hear her. She was about to change the topic when she heard him say in a low voice, "When I first left the Imperial Palace, I would often miss it." Chu Qingyan was stunned. She didn't think that Big Ice Cube would mention it to her. Moreover, he used the word miss. Her heart fluctuated, but her expression was still calm. She said in a gentle voice, "And then?" Xiao Su raised his head and looked at the distant sky. His gaze was a little unfocused, as if he was immersed in some past memories. "I wrote a letter to Imperial Mother. She told me that I had to be outstanding to be qualified to be the Crown Prince. I also wrote a letter to Imperial Father. He was very busy and didn't have time to reply." This voice sounded a little lonely in this quiet night. Chu Qingyan's heart tightened. She knew it would be like this. After that, I didn't write a letter back. Because, without expectations, there would be no disappointment. There was a faint self-mockery in his voice, like a flame that was finally extinguished in the vast darkness. Chapter 971. Chu Qingyan reached out and grabbed his hand. She wanted to say something, but he gently pressed his finger against her lips. His eyes were downcast, and there was a boundless darkness in his eyes that could not be seen clearly. After that, I didn't need to miss any more, because I already had enough ability to protect myself. This was like a child walking in the dark, screaming in fear, but no one appeared. In the end, he closed his eyes and hypnotized himself. "It's okay, this way I can't see the darkness." Chu Qingyan's eyes reflected his indifferent smiling eyes. Suddenly, her heart ached and her mouth tasted bitter. "Big Ice Cube, it's okay, my parents can share half with you." Xiao Su knew what she was thinking and reached out to hold her shoulder. In fact, he said this tonight only because the little fellow had been silent about this topic for so many years. He thought it was a taboo for him, so he didn't dare to touch on this topic. In fact, it wasn't. Today, he just wanted to take this opportunity to let her know that she didn't need to carefully take care of his feelings. But it seemed that he overreached himself. "I'm fine. So many years have passed, this is just a small fragment of my memory." He patted the sentimental little fellow in his arms and looked at the distant mountains. Some of the things in his memory that had already turned yellow and gray suddenly flashed in front of him. Perhaps at that time he was angry, unwilling, wronged, helpless, and sad. But now that he thought about it, it couldn't shake his emotions in the slightest. Things have changed with the passage of time, it was no longer important. He had already found someone worthy of cherishing. Those past sufferings were nothing. People should live in the present and cherish the present. If they were tied down by the past, they would never know what happiness was. If you miss your parents, You can write a letter and let someone bring it back. He pulled himself out of the memory and said with a faint smile. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. She raised her head in his arms. Then you write it too. Xiao Su stared blankly for a moment, then curved his lips. Okay. Getting his answer, Chu Qingyan smiled happily. Father loves you so much, he will be very happy to see your letter. Mother too. Xiao Su hugged her with both hands. His mood was tinged with light joy. Happiness was actually very simple. It was to cherish the right person. At this moment, in a courtyard far away in Jiangnan, there were also people gazing at the moon with longing. Dan Yang, what do you think Kai Kai and Inverted Scallion are doing now? Mr. Chu rested his chin on his hands and looked up at the full moon as he muttered to himself. At this moment, Chu Machen's mother was picking cloth and preparing to make a few sets of clothes for her daughter. When she heard this, she glanced at her husband helplessly. Yuan Zhen, this concubine has heard this sentence more than 20 times since this morning. This concubine's ears are about to grow calluses. Mr. Chu sighed. Dan Yang, you don't understand how I feel. I miss them very much. Mrs. Chu paused and comforted her. They are fighting a war now. They will come back when the war is over. Mr. Chu snorted. That's your answer every time. I've heard you say the same thing more than 20 times since this morning. My ears are getting calluses. A few crows flew over Mrs. Chu's head. Voila, then, Chu Machen's father continued to ramble. I miss them so much. Will they miss me? Won't it be unfair if I miss them more than they miss me? But there's nothing I can do about it. I just miss them. Dan Yang, when will they come back? I'm so lonely by myself. You can play with Xiao Hua, Xiao Bai, and Xiao Huang. Didn't Xiao Hua give birth to a few cubs yesterday? Mrs. Chu tried to divert his attention. Yes, little peanuts and little flowers are here. We can play again. Mr. Chu was immediately attracted. He stood up and circled the stone table a few times. Mrs. Chu heaved a sigh of relief and continued to pick the colors. However, after jumping around for a while, Mr. Chu sat down worriedly and continued to look up at the moon with a frown. But I still miss them very much. Mrs. Chu rubbed her brows. It seemed that her husband would only stop when they came back. War is scary and tiring. I wonder if they took good care of themselves. Mr. Chu started to ramble again like Tang Seng. Sometimes, missing someone wasn't an illness. It was a kind of happiness to have someone miss them. The next morning, Fong Lu and the others led the army toward Qingchao City. Xiao Su followed behind with a few generals. Their purpose was to observe the situation and make preparations for tactical deployment and personnel changes. Chu Qingyan watched as the soldiers and horses slowly disappeared from her sight. Then, she turned to look at Kong Ling. Don't you need to accompany the army today? She was puzzled. Usually, wherever there was Big Ice Cube, there would be Ethereal. It was a little strange today. Ethereal hesitated for a moment before confessing. Master said that he doesn't need me today. They have other military doctors with them. Chu Qingyan frowned. Ethereal never left his side. Why would Big Ice Cube suddenly give such an order? Suddenly, she remembered that she had mentioned to Big Ice Cube that Yen Luo would be leaving in 2 days. Could it be that Big Ice Cube wanted Ethereal to stay or give them some time together? That was something that Big Ice Cube would do. Did you know that Yen Luo will leave when Qingchao City is conquered? Chu Qingyan followed him slowly toward the camp. She pretended to mention it casually, but her eyes were closely watching for changes in his expression. As expected, Chu Qingyan saw a flash of struggle in his eyes when he heard this, but he quickly calmed down. She couldn't help but purse her lips. I know. It was a calm word, and there was nothing else to say. Chu Qingyan stopped in her tracks and took a deep breath. She felt as if a torch was burning fiercely in her chest. Kongling, even if you don't want to continue your relationship with her, you don't have to be so resolute. She's your junior sister after all. How can you send me away so calmly? Aren't you worried that a girl like her might encounter some danger when she goes out alone? Ethereal looked at her with a smile. I know that with your friendship with my junior sister, you'll definitely arrange everything for her. I don't have to worry. Sometimes, Chu Qingyan really wanted to tear that insincere smile off his face. Just as she was about to say something, she heard a familiar voice behind her. I've been looking for you for a long time. The medicine I brewed for you today is ready. Go back and drink it. Chu Qingyan turned around and saw Yen Luo standing not far away. She was surprised. How long had she been standing there? How much had she heard? Was she upset? However, she seemed to have realized something and turned to look at Kong Ling. In fact, he had seen Yen Luo a long time ago. So, he had deliberately said those words to Yen Luo? Chapter 972. Under Chu Qingyan's gaze, Hua Ling was still smiling faintly. Chu Qingyan didn't know what to say for a moment. At this time, Qingyan Luo's urging voice sounded again. Chu Qingyan sighed and could only turn to leave. But before she left, she seemed to have heard Yen Luo's voice. Thank you for your kindness, senior brother. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but close her eyes at the distant voice. In the end, she had no choice but to leave quickly. If some people were destined to be together, then no matter how many wrong paths they took, there would always be a day when they would be by each other's side again. However, if two people were not fated to be together in this life, then there was no use in forcing it. In this world, who wasn't suffering bitterly? It was just a matter of who could endure it. In the southern blue barracks, Pang Huang was lying on the bed, injured. In front of him was a subordinate reporting to him. Your Highness, as you expected, Sichuan's army is currently attacking the city. How many of them are there? Pang Huang coughed lightly, then slowly opened his mouth. The injury this time had caused him to suffer a lot, and his entire person was haggard. Sichuan's army has 300,000 men, but only 50,000 are attacking the city. However, we only have 30 to 40,000 men. The commander replied. Pang Huang nodded, indicating that he already knew. Your Highness, Sichuan's army has several 100,000 men, but only 50,000 are near Qingchao City. Could it be that Xiao Su has made arrangements for the other troops? Will they be disadvantageous to us when the time comes? Ray Luo raised his doubts, looking a little worried. Pang Huang chuckled, those people are not in my eyes at all. Now, you just have to tell me where Xiao Su is now. Xiao Su is at the foot of Qingchao City with the 50,000 troops. A soldier answered. Pang Huang curled his lips in satisfaction. That's good. This crown prince was afraid that he wouldn't be here. But with his style, Qingchao City is an easy place to defend and hard to attack. He won't leave it to his subordinates. At the very least, he will give instructions from the side. Your Highness, we don't have to pay too much attention to Xiao Su. He is only one person. If we can defeat his army, it will be of great help to boost the morale of the army. A general said. He felt that the crown prince was paying too much attention to Xiao Su and was neglecting the essentials. Of course, Pang Huang knew what they were thinking. He sneered, what do you know? What's so scary about Sichuan's 3 armies? For the past half a year, haven't we beaten them into a corner? But Xiao Su is different. He alone is enough to fight against thousands of troops. Ever since he took over the 3 armies, haven't we suffered enough losses at his hands? Qing Cheng stood up to support Pang Huang and said, Your Highness, you're right. When the Xixian army was under Xiao Ran's command, they didn't fight as bravely as they did under Xiao Su's command. This is the influence of a leader on the whole army. I think that if we can get rid of Xiao Su, no matter how many Xixian soldiers we have, we'll be like fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone nodded, feeling that the two were right. At this time, someone suggested, then what does your Highness plan to do next? Sichuan's soldiers have already arrived at Qingchao City. I'm afraid that General Feng and General Fu Yu aren't their match. You don't have to worry. This crown prince already has a plan. Let Feng Chen and Fu Yu hold on for a few days. They must fight to the death and don't let Sichuan's people succeed. When the time comes, this crown prince will personally go to the battlefield and lend them a hand. Pang Huang smiled, but there was an indiscernible darkness in his eyes. But Crown Prince, your body, Ray Luo said in surprise. It's fine. Thanks to the military doctor's medicine, I'm mostly better now. Don't spread the news of this crown prince's injury to avoid upsetting the army's morale. Pang Huang suddenly remembered this matter and immediately gave the order. At this time, the soldiers looked at each other. Pang Huang swept his gaze over everyone and finally narrowed his eyes. What's the meaning of this? Rei Luo stood up with an embarrassed expression. Your Highness, when you returned that day, the news of your injury couldn't be hidden. The soldiers, you trash. Don't you know what it means to pacify the army's morale? Could it be that when this crown prince wasn't here, you didn't have a single person in charge? Pang Huang was so angry that his blood rushed to his head. His face turned even paler and he couldn't stop coughing. Everyone was shocked and immediately called for a military doctor, but Pang Huang stopped them. He took a deep breath and then said to everyone, sooner or later, this crown prince will be angered to death by you all. The soldiers lowered their heads and didn't dare to say anything. If they spoke at this time, they would simply be offending the crown prince. Pang Huang couldn't count on them and ordered, pass down the order. Have the 3 armies gather at noon. This crown prince wants to train them. Rei Luo wanted to remind him about his body, but in the end, under his majesty, he kept quiet. Pang Huang didn't want to see these people and waved his hand to dismiss them. Out of sight, out of mind. But in the end, he still kept Rei Luo and Qing Cheng. The room was silent and the atmosphere was heavy. Rei Luo and Qing Cheng looked at each other. No one dared to take the initiative to speak. They quietly lowered their heads and waited for the crown prince in front of them to speak. Pang Huang said faintly, does the imperial court also know about this crown prince's injury? Since the 3 armies didn't hide it, the imperial court should have also received the news. Rei Luo said with an unnatural expression, His Majesty knows. Pang Huang sneered, then how did he react? Rei Luo glanced at him and stammered, His Majesty is very concerned about you. He wants you to take good care of your body. Is that so? There's no need for such official words. Just tell me the truth. Pang Huang's gaze was oppressive, so Rei Luo could only tell the truth. His Majesty didn't do anything on the surface, but I heard that he sent a lot of things to the second prince in the past 2 days. Rumor has it that His Majesty might release the second prince. As soon as Rei Luo said this, Pang Huang's eyes became ferocious. This crown prince just got into trouble and he's afraid that he won't have a successor. He immediately got close to second brother. He's really my good father. We finally suppressed the second prince's power with great difficulty. If he regains power again, we'll be far away in Sichuan. This, Rei Luo said worriedly. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. The situation wasn't good. Your Highness, let's go all out this time. Let's do it early. Qing Cheng interrupted at this time. Pang Huang glanced at him, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. Okay, we'll do as you say. Activate the spies and let my second brother finish his last journey. The 2 of them understood tacitly. Only then did Pang Huang close his eyes and circulate his qi. However, his mood swings were too severe. As soon as he circulated his qi, he spat out a mouthful of blood. This frightened Rei Luo and Qing Cheng and they immediately stepped forward. Your Highness, how are you? Should we call for a military doctor for you? After spitting out this mouthful of congested blood, Pang Huang felt much more refreshed. He raised his eyes and said coldly, I know my own body best. You should go and prepare how to deal with the enemy. After the room returned to silence, Pang Huang sneered, this time, I'll let them taste the pain of defeat. Chapter 973. Outside Qingqiao City. Xiao Su sat on the back of his horse, watching the battle from afar. Your Highness, this city is a bit difficult to conquer. The enemy has the geographical advantage and is giving us a lot of trouble. Gao Hao looked at the direction of the billowing smoke, his voice anxious. Can't we attack with fire? Jing Guanghui suggested. At this moment, Hualing shook his head. There are many captives in Qingqiao City. If we attack with fire, the ones who will be hurt will definitely be our people. Jing Guanghui scratched his head, realizing that he had misspoken. Xiao Su waited for everyone to finish their discussion before slowly opening his mouth. His voice wasn't loud, but it clearly reached everyone's ears. This will be a long battle. Let's see who can last until the end. Everyone nodded. Because the Southern Blue Army's provisions had been burned, they couldn't be replenished. It was only a matter of time before the Southern Blue Army was defeated. As long as they cut off their escape route, they would be defeated in the end. A day passed, and the army retreated at night. Chu Qingyan was still waiting for Xiao Su. In the tent, Chu Qingyan wrung out a towel and handed it to him. Is Qingchao City really that difficult to take down? She had heard a lot of news from the front lines, so she waited for him to return before she had the chance to ask. Xiao Su took the towel and wiped his face and hands. Qingchao City is more sturdy than Jiangning County. In addition, there are many people inside. If we want to take it down, we will need some time. Chu Qingyan listened to his words. It seemed that he still had some reservations. She couldn't help but move closer to him and look at him carefully. Then she asked, "Actually, you already have a plan, but you don't want to say it?" When Xiao Su heard this, he couldn't help but scratch her nose. "You mischievous spirit." After hearing this praise, she knew that she had guessed correctly. Because Pang Huang was not personally overseeing the situation, and their men were enough to crush their men. In addition, her family's ice cube was so smart, it should not take too long to take them down. Then why don't you go? Chu Qingyan didn't understand. Shouldn't it be a quick battle? Sichuan needs generals and soldiers who can carry the flag. My time has passed. Heroes will emerge from every generation. I should give them more opportunities to hone themselves, Xiao Su said, raising his eyebrows. In truth, there were still some things that he did not say. If Jin Xian wanted to gain a foothold in the imperial court in the future, he had to make contributions. Thus, he wanted to create an opportunity for him. Whether or not he could seize it depended on himself. Chu Qingyan listened to his words and felt that they were very reasonable. She supported her chin with one hand as she sat on the chair and looked at him. With a determined expression, she said, "That's right. If Sichuan has a few more brave warriors, if anything happens in the future, they won't only think about you. We can also be happy and idle." Xiao Su smiled. This was the difference between Xiao Su and Pang Huang. Pang Huang liked to have everything in his hands. As a result, if something happened to him, the army would be leaderless and without a backbone. However, Xiao Su implemented a policy of letting them do as they pleased. Within his control, he allowed them to do as they pleased. If they really couldn't handle it, he could still control the situation from behind and not cause too much damage. This was also why any soldier who was trained by Xiao Su could hold up half the sky. Unfortunately, Sichuan Emperor was wary of this. He relied on Xiao Su's ability, but also feared his ability. As the war reached its climax, Xiao Su was already consciously training generals for Sichuan. He couldn't predict what would happen in the future, but as long as he was on the throne, he would continue to work. At this moment, someone came to report from outside. Xiao Su said indifferently, "Let them in." Jin Xian, Fong Lu, and Xing Cheng lifted the curtain and walked in. When Xiao Su saw the three of them, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "What's the matter?" Fong Lu looked at the two beside him, then took the initiative to speak as the representative. "Your Highness, the few of us have just discussed a plan to attack the city." "Let's hear it." Xiao Su was interested. Chu Qingyan, who was standing at the side, immediately stood up straight and looked at them expectantly. "It's like this. Today, when we attacked, we found that the enemy was stubbornly resisting. They should be waiting for reinforcements to arrive. If we announce that Pang Huang is injured and the Southern Song Army is injured, we can gradually break down their resistance. Then we tell them that their provisions have been taken away. They will panic even more and lose their will to fight." Fong Lu slowly explained their plan. Xing Cheng added, "This general has fought with Fu Yu before. He is a cowardly and timid person. Once he knows that there are no reinforcements or rations, if we insist on persuading him to surrender for another 2 days, he might just abandon the city and surrender. That person called Feng Chen will be difficult to deal with. Other than his desire for grandiose achievements, His ability to lead troops is still desirable. However, we have also heard that this person has had quite a bit of friction with Fu Yu during the past few days. This is something that we can make use of. Jin Xian expressed his opinion after the two of them finished speaking. Chu Qingyan listened attentively. The more she listened, the more she admired the people beside her. He was right. If they were given a certain amount of space and opportunity, these people would grow very quickly. Today, she had seen it for herself. After the three of them finished speaking, Xiao Su looked at them with admiration. Very good, you guys can do as you wish. After the three of them received affirmation that they were all young people, their faces were filled with uncontrollable joy, and they immediately got up and left. Chu Qingyan felt that the three of them were like a gust of wind when they left, and she could not help but be filled with emotions. Ian, do you know what strategy they are using? At this moment, Big Ice Cube's question suddenly rang out. Chu Qingyan was stunned for a moment, then carefully recalled what the three of them said, and her eyes lit up. This is the so-called closing the door to catch the thief? Xiao Su smiled and nodded. That's right. Chu Qingyan was encouraged and immediately said, I once read a book. It said that when a thief is being chased, if the thief has a chance to escape, he will fight to the death. If he blocks the thief's escape route, he will be captured. It means that if the thief finds out that he has a chance to escape, he will fight to the death. If he blocks his escape route, the thief will definitely be captured. So, Jin Xian and the rest want to cut off the escape route of the people in the city. Once people see no hope, they will be very passive, and this will be beneficial to our attack. When the time comes, they will only have the option of surrendering. Xiao Su reached out and stroked her long hair, a faint smile appearing on his face. You are a promising child. It's master who taught me well. Chu Qingyan pretended to be obedient. Xiao Su shook his head and chuckled. Then he said, Jin Xian is a good seedling, and his future is limitless. You don't have to worry too much, I will be by his side to protect him. As expected of Big Ice Cube, he knew what she was worried about. Chu Qingyan smiled and nodded heavily. With Big Ice Cube's words, she was relieved. Chapter 974. The method of Jin Xian and the others worked very quickly. In the short span of 2 to 3 days, the Southern Blue Army could not hold on any longer. Furthermore, due to the internal strife between Fu Yu and Feng Chen, both sides began to feel powerless. In the end, Fu Yu eliminated Feng Chen and chose to surrender. The siege of Qingchao City was finally successful. When Chu Qingyan heard this news, she was so happy that she couldn't contain her joy. At this time, she also received the order to break camp and head for Qingchao City. Chu Qingyan immediately ordered everyone to pack up and head for Qingchao City. Your Highness, everything is under your control. In a hidden place, Qing Cheng stood in front of Pang Huang with a ruthless expression. Pang Huang curled his lips into a smile. Well done. Send someone to receive Fu Yu later. This crown prince still has things to settle with Xiao Su. Yes, Your Highness, please be careful. Qing Cheng immediately left with his men. Pang Huang looked at the slowly approaching troops and smiled ruthlessly. Xiao Su, oh Xiao Su, this crown prince can't wait to see your panicked face. Later, you will have a taste of what it means to fall from the clouds into a quagmire. With that, he disappeared with his men in a flash. Chu Qingyan quickly rejoined the army with her men. Xiao Su glanced at the people behind her and nodded. We will enter the city in a quarter of an hour. Chu Qingyan expressed her understanding and then ordered people to help tidy up the battlefield in front of the city. At this time, the number of people was being counted. Cheng Yanluo dismounted and walked to the side. The sun was a little strong today, making people dizzy from the heat. She took the water bag and took a sip to quench her thirst. When she put down the water bag, she saw a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. She wanted to control herself and not look in his direction, but for some reason she couldn't help but glance over. Although Xiao Su had ordered him to stay in the camp, ever since that day when they met under the tree, he had left with the army. She couldn't help but laugh at herself. It seemed that the two of them had broken off their relationship, and he wasn't even willing to look at her. She recalled how beautiful their future was back then. Unfortunately, at that time, neither of them would have thought that in the end, the two of them would be strangers. After today, she was going to leave. Perhaps after this farewell, they would never meet again. She didn't want to restrain herself anymore. She didn't want to laugh at herself for being useless or stupid. At this moment, she wanted to engrave his figure in her memory for the last time. This relationship had persisted for too long, so long that it had become a habit. She didn't know if she still had the strength to erase it from her heart. At this moment, he would just treat it as indulging himself. When she looked over, Ethereal was treating the wounds of a soldier. She seemed to have sensed something and looked in her direction. Their gazes met in midair, separated by dozens of figures. It felt as if the depths of their souls were slightly shaken because of this gaze. This gaze was like a flurry of flowers brushing past. There was no resentment or deep affection. It was as if it had transcended more than 10 years of memories and finally settled on this scene. If you no longer have love, then I wish you peace and health in the future. Cheng Yanluo wanted to smile, but in the end, she couldn't bring herself to smile. In the end, she still couldn't let go. She was the first to retract her gaze. She lowered her head and looked at the water bag in her hand. The corners of her mouth turned bitter. Ethereal seemed to have understood the meaning in her eyes from afar. Her heart felt as if it had been hollowed out. Xiaoyan, I'm very gratified that you think this way. However, it's not that I don't love you. It's just that my love will become a burden to you. You're such a good girl. In the future, you'll definitely meet someone better than me. So, you have to forget about me. Chu Qingyan saw this scene from afar. She sighed heavily and complained to the person beside her who was watching the army, if Ethereal wasn't your man, I would have beaten him up already. Xiao Su was puzzled. Did he provoke you again? Chu Qingyan snorted. None of you men are reliable. Xiao Su frowned slightly. She was actually venting her anger on him. It seemed that Ethereal had made a serious mistake. He had to find a time to talk to him properly. At this moment, Jin Xen rushed over on his horse. He walked up to Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan and cupped his hands in obeisance. Your Highness, young master, the city gates are open. The battlefield has been cleaned up. We can enter the city now. Xiao Su nodded and gave the order to depart. Thus, the army marched toward Qingchao City in a grandiose manner. This battle took 4 days. Although it was intense, the destruction of the city wasn't too serious. Thus, the journey was smooth. When they were about to reach the city gates, they saw Fong Lu leading the army to welcome them from afar. The army was in high spirits. But not long after, they saw someone riding out from the city, looking flustered as he spoke to Fong Lu about something. When they met up, Xiao Su frowned at Fong Lu's unsightly expression and asked, "What happened?" Fong Lu didn't dare to hide anything and immediately replied, "Just now, a subordinate reported that Fu Yu broke free and escaped in the chaos. He even injured many soldiers." Xiao Su's brows furrowed deeply. How could he possibly escape under so many guards? It's this general's fault. I've already sent people to pursue him. Fong Lu immediately apologized with a look of self-blame. Xiao Su waved his hand. Forget it. It's good that you've already sent people to pursue him. Let's enter the city first. Fong Lu nodded and didn't dare to stay any longer. He immediately ordered his men to clear the path ahead. Chu Qingyan listened to their conversation from the side and couldn't help but look up at Qingchao City in front of her. Her mind was spinning rapidly. This Qingchao City only had 2 gates. According to Jin Xian's deployment, they should have already surrounded both sides and heavily guarded. Wanting to escape was simply a joke. Furthermore, Fu Yu wasn't Consort Xiang and couldn't have turned into a butterfly and flown away. So the question was, how did Fu Yu escape? This question kept circling in her mind, so much so that she didn't notice it even when she entered the city. When she came back to her senses, the scene before her jumped into her eyes. Qingchao City occupied a vast area, so when she entered the city, she couldn't see anything other than the city walls. The ground was empty and yellow with no signs of life. It was hard to imagine that this was one of the 10 most prosperous cities in Sichuan that she had heard of before. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. War could cause so much damage to people. Everywhere she looked, there was no prosperity. But for some reason, ever since she entered the city, her left eyelid kept twitching. She felt a little uneasy. But now that they were all on her side and the enemy had surrendered, she didn't know what else she had to worry about. But at this moment, on top of the city walls where the sun was the brightest, a figure suddenly appeared like a ghost. Standing with his back to the light, he was dressed in blue and had black hair. He was tall and had a vaguely familiar appearance. She quickly searched through the memories in her mind, and soon, this person overlapped with a person in her memory. Peng Huang? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.